Welcome, friends, to a quiet corner of the past, where the whispers of history call us to a land of mystery and wonder. Tonight, I invite you to settle in, let the world fade away, and drift with me to the ancient heart of Africa, where a kingdom rose from the earth like a seed breaking through the soil. This is the story of Benin, a realm forged in the crucible of ambition, faith, and the unseen forces that shaped its people's lives. Picture yourself beneath a starlit sky, the air warm and heavy with the scent of forest leaves, as we begin our journey into a time long forgotten, where the seeds of a mighty kingdom were sown. If you're enjoying this gentle dive into history, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more tales that breathe life into the past. Long before the name Benin was spoken with reverence and fear, the land was known as Igo de Magado, a patchwork of villages nestled in the lush, green embrace of what is now southern Nigeria. It was the late 12th century, and the world here moved to the rhythm of the seasons. Farmers tilled the rich red earth, coaxing yams and cassava from the soil. Women wove baskets from palm fronds, their hands deft and sure, while children laughed and chased each other through the shade of towering iroko trees. The air hummed with life, the chirp of crickets, the distant call of a hornbill, the soft murmur of voices bartering in bustling markets. But beneath this harmony lay a restless undercurrent, a longing for something greater. The people of Igo de Magado were not one but many, bound by language and custom, yet divided by clan loyalties. Each village had its own chief, its own shrine to the ancestors, its own stories whispered around flickering fires. They honored the spirits of the land gods of the river, the forest, and the sky, offering gifts of kola, nuts, and palm wine to ensure good harvests and safe births. Yet for all their shared beliefs, unity eluded them. Disputes over land flared like dry grass in the Harmattan wind. A farmer might claim a neighbor's plot, sparking feuds that simmered for generations. Trade routes, vital for bartering salt, beads, and cowrie shells, became battlegrounds for rival clans. The elders, wise but weary, knew their people needed a leader to bind them, a figure touched by something greater than mortal ambition. In those days, the land was alive with stories of the divine. The people believed the gods walked among them, their presence felt in the rustle of leaves or the sudden stillness before a storm. One such story told of Igodo, a legendary figure said to have been the first to unite the scattered villages. Igodo was no ordinary man. His name meant the creator in the old tongue, and some said he was born of the earth itself, his strength drawn from the roots of the sacred groves. He built the first great meeting place, a clearing where the clans could gather under the watchful eyes of the ancestors. But Igodo's time had long passed, and his legacy was fading, fractured by the squabbles of his descendants. The people needed a new spark, a new vision to carry them forward. To the northwest lay Ife, a city of myth and majesty revered as the cradle of the Yoruba people. Its streets were lined with sculptures of gods and kings, their faces carved in terracotta, eyes seeming to follow those who passed. Ife was said to be the place where the world began, where the great god Orisha breathed life into the first humans. The people of Igo de Magado looked to Ife with awe, believing its rulers held a divine mandate. And so, in their hour of need, the elders made a fateful decision. They sent emissaries across the forests and rivers, bearing gifts of ivory and woven cloth, to plead with Uni, the king of Ife, for a leader who could forge their scattered villages into a single, mighty kingdom. The journey to Ife was no small feat. The emissaries traveled for weeks, their sandals sinking into the soft earth, their bodies brushed by the damp leaves of the forest. They crossed rivers swollen by rain, their canoes swaying in the current, and passed through villages where curious eyes watched from thatched doorways. At last, they reached Ife, its walls gleaming under the sun, and knelt before the Uni. Their plea was simple yet profound: send us a king, one who carries the blood of the gods, to bring order to our land. The Uni, a man whose presence seemed to command the very air, listened in silence. Then, with a nod, he made a choice that would echo through the centuries. He would send his son Aranmian, a warrior prince whose name was already sung in tales of bravery. Aranmian's arrival in Igo de Magado was like a storm breaking over the horizon. He was tall, his frame broad and unyielding, his eyes sharp with the fire of ambition. The people gathered to see him, their whispers a mix of hope and suspicion. Here was a stranger, a man from a distant city, claiming to lead them. Some saw promise in his strength. Others saw only an outsider. Aranmian, for his part, was undaunted. He walked the paths of Igo de Magado, his sandals kicking up dust, and spoke of a kingdom that could rival Ife itself, a place where the gods would smile upon a united people. But the land was wild, its people stubborn, and Aranmian's patience wore thin. He called it Ilabinu, the land of vexation, a name that would linger long after he was gone. Yet Aranmian did not leave Igo de Magado unchanged. Before he departed, he took a wife from among the people, a woman named Ethi, whose beauty was said to rival the moonlight on the Ovia River. Their union bore a son, a child destined to inherit the dreams of both Ife and Igo de Magado. This boy, raised in the shadow of his father's fleeting reign, would become the first true Oba, the king who would lay the foundation for a dynasty that would rule with fear, magic, and unmatched splendor. His name was Uika, and his story, dear friends, is where we will wander next, as the stars above Igodomigodo twinkled over the sleeping villagers. The promise of a new era stirred in the heart of a young boy, a prince who would carry the weight of his people's hopes. So, keep your eyes closed, let the warmth of this tale wrap around you, and we'll meet again soon to follow Uika's path, where the seeds of a kingdom began to bloom. As the whispers of Igodomigodo's origins fade into the warm night air, the memory of Aranmian's arrival and the spark of a new era lingering like the scent of palm wine over the villages. Let's linger a little longer in this ancient land, where the seeds of a mighty kingdom took root. The story of Benin's rise didn't end with the divine plea to Ife or the fleeting reign of a foreign prince. It was carried forward by a boy, born of two worlds, whose destiny would forge a dynasty that shaped the soul of a nation. Tonight, dear friends, let's walk through the dusty paths and shaded groves where Uika, the first Oba, grew into the leader who would bind Igodomigodo's clans with strength and vision. Settle in, let the world grow quiet, and allow the gentle rhythm of this tale to carry you through the dawn of a dynasty. If you're finding peace in this journey into Benin's past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that breathe life into forgotten times. In the late 12th century, Igodomigodo was a land of scattered villages, its people bound by shared customs but divided by clan rivalries. The red earth paths wound through fields of yams and cassava where farmers toiled under the sun, their hands stained with soil, their songs rising to honor the spirits of the land. The air was alive with the chirp of crickets and the distant call of hornbills, but beneath this harmony lay a restless yearning for unity. Oranmian, the prince from Ife, had come and gone, leaving behind a son born to a local woman named Ethi, whose beauty was said to rival the moonlight on the Ovia River. This boy, named Uika, was destined to bridge the divide between the city of Ife, and the wild heart of Igodomigodo. Uika's early years were spent in the village of Ustalu, where Ihi raised him among the rhythms of daily life. The scent of roasting plantains filled their hut, and the soft clink of her coral beads marked her steps as she wove baskets or bartered in the market. Uika, with his wide eyes and quick smile, followed her through the village, his small hands clutching hers as they passed shrines adorned with carved wooden figures. The elders watched him, whispering of his father's lineage, a prince of Ife, touched by the gods. Yet Ehi taught him the ways of a people, the Edo, whose stories of Igodo, the first leader, spoke of a time when the clan stood as one. "Ah, their son," she would say, her voice soft but firm, "but you must also be their own." The court of the Ogiso, Igodomigodo's early ruler, was a place of both awe and tension, its mud brick walls rising near the central clearing where the clans gathered. Here Uika grew, his childhood shaped by the sights and sounds of power, the low chants of the Owen priests, the gleam of bronze-tipped spears carried by guards, the rustle of nobles' wrappers dyed in indigo and ochre. The Ogeso, an aging, the leader whose authority was waning, saw a promise in the boy, but also a threat. Uika's bloodline from Ife, a city revered as the cradle of creation, gave him a divine aura that unsettled the court. A noble named Oseron, his voice loud with pride, once scoffed, "A boy from Ife cannot rule our land." But Ehi, standing tall, countered, "He is born of our soil, and the gods will choose." The court fell silent, the air thick with the weight of her words. Uika's path to leadership was not smooth. The clans, though weary of division, were stubborn, their loyalties tied to their own chiefs. A farmer named Ovibiosa, whose fields bordered the Ovia River, spoke for many when he questioned whether a boy could unite them. Yet Uika's presence had a quiet power. At 12 he joined a ritual in the sacred grove, where the Owen priests offered a goat to Asonobua, the supreme creator. As the blood soaked the earth, Uika stood unafraid, his small frame steady, his eyes fixed on the priest's chants. The elders, watching from the shadows, saw a spark of destiny, a boy who could carry Igodomigodo forward. Ovibiosa, moved by the sight, later poured palm wine at his shrine, praying for the boy's strength. By his late teens, Uika was no longer a boy but a young man, his frame tall and his voice steady. The Ogiso's death left a void, and the clans, torn by rivalries, turned to the priests for guidance. The Owen, casting cowrie shells in the torchlit court, declared Uika the chosen one, his lineage from Ife, a sign of divine favor. His coronation was a moment of unity, the clearing filled with the beat of drums and the scent of burning herbs. Ethi stood beside him, her coral beads gleaming, as the priests placed a crown of woven palm fronds on his head. The people cheered, their voices rising like a tide, but Uika felt the weight of their hopes, knowing that his rule would be tested by the gods and the land. Uika's early reign laid the foundation for a dynasty. He moved the court to a new compound, its walls adorned with the first bronze plaques, crafted to honor his father's legacy. A sculptor named Osaro, his hands steady as he poured molten metal, carved Uika's image, his face serene yet strong. The young Oba walked among the villagers, his sandals kicking up dust, listening to the people's needs, a farmer's plea for rain, a trader's hope for safer routes. His rule was not without fear. He relied on the Owen to enforce his decrees, their rituals a reminder of the god's power. Yet, Uika's heart was with his people, his mother's lessons guiding him to rule with both strength and care. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the heart of Benin together. As the drums of Uika's coronation faded into the night, their rhythm lingering over the villages, the young Oba stood in his new court, his gaze fixed on the bronze plaques that told his story. The kingdom was stirring, its clans united under his rule. But the gods were ever present, their voices guiding the rituals that would shape his reign. So, rest now, let the echoes of Uika's rise linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon, to wander through the sacred rites that bound Igbo to the divine. As the embers of Uika's birth glow softly in the fading light of Igbo's early days, let's linger a little longer in this ancient land, where the air was thick with the whispers of gods and the pulse of sacred rituals. The young Prince Uika was growing under the watchful eyes of his mother, Ethi, and the elders, his destiny already woven into the fabric of a kingdom on the cusp of greatness. But before Uika could take his place as the first Oba, the people of Igbo lived in a world where the divine was as real as the earth beneath their feet. Tonight, dear friends, let's drift through the sacred groves and smoky courtyards, where magic and fear shaped the heart of a burgeoning realm. Settle in, let the world grow still, and allow the rhythm of this story to carry you deeper into the past. If you're finding peace in this journey through Benin's untold history, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more tales that weave the past into the present. In the villages of Igbo, life was inseparable from the spiritual. The people believed the gods were ever present, their voices carried on the wind, their judgments etched in the sudden crack of thunder or the gentle ripple of the Ovia River. Every tree, every stone, every bend in the path held a story, a spirit, a warning. The elders taught that the world was a tapestry of the seen and unseen, where ancestors watched over their descendants, and deities like Olakon, the god of the sea, or Ogun, the lord of iron, could bless or curse with equal ease. To live well was to honor these forces, to offer gifts of yams, goats, or palm wine at shrines adorned with carved wooden figures, their eyes wide and unblinking, as if peering into the soul. The heart of this spiritual world was the court of the Ogiso, the early rulers who preceded the Obas, though Igado's line had weakened. The Ogiso's court was a place of awe, a sprawling compound of mud-brick walls and thatched roofs where priests and diviners held sway. These men and women, known as the Owen, were the bridge between the human and the divine. Clad in white robes stained with red earth, they chanted incantations under the moonlight, their voices rising and falling like waves. They read the future in the patterns of cowrie shells scattered on woven mats, their fingers tracing paths only they could see. A farmer seeking a good harvest might bring a chicken to the Owen, who would slit its throat and study the way the blood pooled, whispering, "The gods are pleased, but you must plant by the next moon." Yet, the power of the gods was not always benevolent. Fear was a constant companion in Igbo, for the spirits could be as wrathful as they were generous. A drought that withered crops was seen as the anger of Osanaboa, the supreme creator, perhaps offended by a forgotten ritual. A sudden illness sweeping through a village might be blamed on an ancestor slighted by a careless word. To appease these forces, the people turned to rituals that were as elaborate as they were solemn. In the sacred groves, hidden deep in the forest, where the air was cool and heavy, the Owen led ceremonies under the canopy of ancient trees. They danced to the beat of drums, their bodies painted with chalk and charcoal, offering sacrifices to ensure the gods' favor. A goat's cry would pierce the night, its blood sinking into the earth as the crowd watched in reverent silence. One such ritual, the festival of the new yam, marked the turning of the seasons. As the harvest approached, the people gathered in the central clearing of Igbo, their voices rising in song. Women wove garlands of leaves, their laughter mingling with the scent of roasting yams. Men carried baskets of the first crops to the shrine, where the Owen blessed them with palm oil, smearing it on the carved faces of the gods. But not all rituals were so joyous. Some whispered of darker rites, held in secret where the gods demanded more than livestock. The elders spoke in hushed tones of times when a human life was offered to appease a vengeful spirit, though such stories were rarely shared beyond the inner circle of the court. These acts, shrouded in mystery, cast a shadow over the people, reminding them that the gods' favor came at a price. The court itself was a place where magic and power intertwined. The Ogiso, though not yet divine like the later Abas, was seen as a man touched by the gods. His throne, carved from a single iroko tree, was adorned with beads and cowrie shells, each one a symbol of his authority. Around him stood the Owen, their faces stern, and the palace guards, their spears gleaming in the firelight. But it was the diviners who held the true power, for they spoke the will of the gods. A young man named Osazi, a diviner's apprentice, once stood trembling before the Ogiso, clutching a handful of shells. The court was silent, the air thick with tension, as he cast the shells and declared that a rival clan was plotting betrayal. The Ogiso's eyes narrowed, and by dawn, warriors had raided the clan's village. their homes left smoldering. Vision had saved the court, or so the story went, but it also sowed fear, for who could know when the gods might point to them next? This fear was not just of the gods, but of the men who claimed to speak for them. The Owen were revered, but they were also watched with wary eyes. A woman named Adiswa, a weaver whose hands could craft cloth so fine it seemed woven by spirits, once dared to question a diviner's prophecy. She had seen no rain for months, her crops dying in the fields, yet the Owen demanded more offerings. Why do the gods ask so much? She whispered to her neighbors. Her words reached the court, and soon Adisua was gone, her hut empty, her fate a mystery. Some said the gods had taken her. Others said the Owen had. Either way, her story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that in Igodomigodo, faith and fear walked hand in hand. As Uika grew, he watched these rituals from the shadows, a boy caught between the world of his mother's people and the divine legacy of his father Aranmian. The court was his playground, but also his school, where he learned the power of the gods and the weight of the throne he would one day claim. The Owen took note of him, their eyes lingering on the boy who carried the blood of Ife. They whispered that he was marked by destiny, that the gods had chosen him to lead Igodomigodo into a new era. But destiny, as Uika would learn, was a double-edged sword, forged in the fires of ritual and tempered by the fears of those who followed. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the mysteries of Benin together. As the drums of the sacred groves faded into the night, the young Uika stood at the edge of the court, his small frame silhouetted against the flickering torches. The gods had spoken, the rituals had been performed, but the true test of his destiny was yet to come. The land of Igodomigodo was stirring, its people yearning for a leader who could harness the power of the divine and forge a kingdom that would stand the test of time. So, rest now, let the story linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to walk with Uika as he steps into the light of his fate. As the sacred drums of Igodomigodo's rituals fade into the warm night, let's wander from the shadowed groves and the flickering torchlight of the Ogiso's court to a place where the heartbeat of the people pulsed loudest. Young Uika still, a boy with destiny heavy on his shoulders, was growing in a land alive with voices, not just those of gods and priests, but of farmers, traders, and weavers who filled the air with laughter, bartering, and the hum of daily life. Tonight, dear friends, let's stroll through the bustling market of Usulu, where the colors, scents, and stories of Igodomigodo wove a vibrant tapestry that bound the people together. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the rhythm of this tale to carry you through the crowded paths of a kingdom on the rise. If you're finding comfort in this journey through Benin's past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that breathe life into forgotten times. The market of Usulu was the lifeblood of Igodomigodo, a sprawling open square just beyond the central villages, where the earth was packed hard by countless feet. By dawn, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy of Iroko and mahogany trees, the market came alive. Women balanced baskets of yams and plantains on their heads, their wrappers dyed in shades of indigo and ochre, swaying as they called out their wares. Men hauled sacks of kola nuts and bundles of smoked fish, their voices rising in a friendly haggle over prices. Children darted between stalls, clutching cowrie shells to trade for roasted corn or sweet honeycombs, their giggles mingling with the clink of bronze bracelets and the bleating of goats. The air was thick with the scent of life-roasted peanuts, sizzling over open fires, the sharp tang of palm oil, the earthy musk of freshly turned soil clinging to baskets of cassava. Traders from neighboring villages brought their goods, their dialects blending into a chorus of Edo, Yoruba, and other tongues that carried the weight of ancient ties. A woman named Osa, her fingers stained with indigo from dyeing cloth, spread her fabrics across a wooden stall, each piece telling a story of patterns passed down through generations. She'd laugh with her customers, her voice warm as she recounted how her grandmother taught her to weave under the moonlight, believing the stars blessed the cloth with strength. But the market was more than a place of trade. It was a stage where the people's hopes and fears played out. Here, news traveled faster than the wind. A farmer named Ikana might lean against a stall, sipping palm wine, and whisper of a strange omen, a python crossing the path to the river, a sign of the gods' unease. His friend, a blacksmith named Yue, would nod gravely, his hands scarred from the forge, and share a tale of a diviner's warning about a coming drought. These stories, passed from one stall to the next, shaped the pulse of Igodomigodo, binding the people in shared belief and quiet apprehension. The market was where the divine and the earthly met, where a trader might pause to pour a libation of palm wine onto the ground, murmuring thanks to Olakan for a safe journey. Yet, beneath the vibrant chaos, there was tension. The market was a mirror of Igodomigodo's fractured unity. Clans bartered fiercely, each seeking to outdo the other. A dispute over a stolen goat could spark a shouting match, drawing a crowd that took sides based on old loyalties. The Ogiso's guards, their spears glinting in the sun, patrolled the edges, their presence a reminder of the fragile order. Once, a young trader named Ihigiata dared to challenge a noble's claim to a prime stall. His voice rang out, bold and defiant, until the guards dragged him away, his protests fading into the dust. By evening, the market buzzed with whispers. Ihigiata had been fined a year's worth of crops, a punishment that left his family teetering on ruin. The market, for all its warmth, was a place where power cast a long shadow. For young Uika, the market was a world of wonder and lessons. Escorted by his mother Ehi, he'd weave through the crowds, his small hand clutching hers, his eyes wide at the sight of a trader from the north offering beads that shimmered like river water. Ethi, a woman of quiet strength, would barter for herbs or cloth, teaching Uika the art of negotiation with a smile. But she also taught him to listen to the stories, the complaints, the dreams that flowed through the market like a river. The people of the kingdom, she'd say, her voice soft but firm, as they paused by a stall piled high with yams. Uika watched and learned, noticing how the traders bowed to the Oan priests passing through, their white robes stark against the colorful crowd, and how the people's eyes darted nervously when the Ogoso's name was mentioned. One day, as Uika stood by a stall, a grizzled storyteller named Omerig caught his eye. The old man sat cross-legged on a mat, his voice low and rhythmic, drawing a small crowd. He spoke of Igodo, the first leader who had walked these very paths, uniting the clans with words as strong as iron. But unity is fragile, Omerig said, his eyes glinting like a clay pot in a storm. Uika, barely 10 years old, felt the words settle in his chest. He saw the market not just as a place of trade, but as a reflection of the kingdom and his father. Oranmian had left behind a kingdom that needed a leader to mend its cracks. Omer's gaze lingered on the boy, as if he saw the weight of destiny in his young frame. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you liked the video, and let's keep wandering through the vibrant heart of Benin together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the market in hues of gold and amber, Uika returned to the court, his mind buzzing with the voices of Usulu, the people's dreams, their fears, their stories. They were the threads of a kingdom waiting to be woven into something greater. But beyond the market's lively hum, another force was stirring, one forged in the heat of battle and the clash of bronze. The warriors of Igodamagado, their spears sharp and their hearts fierce, were preparing to carve their place in the world. So, rest now, let the colors of the market linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to follow the path of those who defended the kingdom with blood and fire. As the vibrant hum of the Usulu market fades into the twilight, its colors and voices lingering like a soft melody, let's turn our steps toward the edges of Igodomigodo, where the air grows sharp with the clang of metal and the resolve of those who guarded the land. Young Uika, his heart stirred by the stories and struggles of the market, was beginning to see the threads that wove his people together. But beyond the lively stalls and sacred groves, another force defined the soul of this budding kingdom, a force of sweat, blood, and bronze. Tonight, dear friends, let's walk among the warriors of Igodomigodo, men and women whose courage and ferocity carved a path for the kingdom's rise. Settle in, let the world grow quiet, and allow this tale to carry you through the dust and fire of a land forged in battle. If you're finding peace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that breathe life into forgotten times. In the late 12th century, Igodomigodo was a land surrounded by rivals and restless spirits. To the north, nomadic traders and raiders roamed the savannah, their eyes gleaming with ambition. To the east and west, neighboring clans guarded their own patches of forest and river, quick to challenge any who trespassed. The people of Igod knew peace was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the glint of a spear or the hoofbeats of an approaching enemy. Their warriors, known as the Agivbo, were the shield and sword of the land, their lives dedicated to protecting the villages and expanding the influence of the Ogoso's court. The Agivbo were not a standing army, but a brotherhood of men, sometimes women drawn from every clan. They trained in the open fields beyond the villages, where the earth was scarred by their footsteps and the air rang with the clash of bronze blades. Their weapons were simple but deadly, spears tipped with iron, short swords forged by blacksmiths who prayed to Ogun, the god of metal, and shields woven from palm fronds, tough as leather. A warrior named Okian, broad-shouldered and quick as a leopard, was a legend among them. His spear, it was said, could pierce the hide of a buffalo with a single thrust. Okian would stand before the younger warriors, his chest marked with scars, like a map of battles won, and teach them to move as one. Their steps synchronized like the beat of a drum. Training was grueling, a test of body and spirit. At dawn, the warriors ran through the forest, their feet pounding the earth, dodging roots and vines as they learned to navigate the dense terrain. By midday, they sparred under the unrelenting sun, sweat dripping onto the ground as they practiced thrusts and parries. The elders, many of them former warriors, watched from the shade, nodding in approval or barking corrections. "Hold your shield high, Emade," one might shout, as a young warrior stumbled under a mock attack. Emade, barely 16, would grit his teeth and try again, his dreams of glory outweighing the ache in his arms. For these warriors, honor was everything. A life given to protect the land was a life blessed by the ancestors. But the Ege were more than fighters. They were bound by rituals that tied them to the gods. Before a battle, they gathered in the sacred groves, where the Oan priests anointed their weapons with palm oil and chanted prayers to Ogun and Espu, the trickster god who guarded the crossroads of fate. The warriors drank a bitter brew of herbs, said to sharpen their senses and shield them from harm. One night, as a crescent moon hung low, Okian led a group of warriors to face raiders from the north who had stolen cattle from a border village. Before they marched, the Oan sacrificed a ram, its blood pooling in the earth as a plea for victory. The warriors, their faces painted with white chalk, moved silently through the forest, their spears gleaming in the moonlight. By dawn they returned, weary but triumphant, the stolen cattle trailing behind them. The village celebrated, but Okian's eyes were distant. He had lost a friend in the skirmish, a reminder that victory always carried a cost. The warriors' presence was felt beyond the battlefield. In the villages, they were heroes, their stories sung by griots around evening fires. A woman named Asiosa, one of the rare female Egavo, was a favorite in these tales. Her agility with a spear was unmatched, and her courage in defending a village from a rival clan had saved countless lives. Children would mimic her movements, brandishing sticks as if they were spears, while their mothers wove her name into lullabies. Yet Asius's strength came with a burden. She faced whispers from those who believed a woman's place was at the loom, not the battlefield. Undeterred, she trained harder, her resolve a quiet fire that inspired others to challenge the old ways. Uika, now a boy of 12, watched the Egavo with wide eyes. He'd slip away from his mother's side to linger near their training grounds, his heart racing as he saw Okian spar with a younger warrior, their blades flashing like lightning. Eki, ever watchful, would find him and pull him back, her voice gentle but firm. Your strength will be in leading, not fighting. But Uika felt the pull of the warrior's world, the promise of glory that could unify the clans. One day Okian noticed the boy and handed him a wooden spear. Its weight heavy in Uika's small hands. Hold it steady, Okian said, his voice gruff but kind. A king must know the heart of his warriors. Those words stayed with Uika, planting a seed that would grow as he stepped closer to his destiny. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the fiery heart of Benin together. As the dust of the training ground settled and the warriors' chants faded into the night, Uika returned to the court, his mind ablaze with visions of strength and unity. The Agivbo were the backbone of Ego Damagado, but another art was rising in the kingdom, one that would capture its soul in gleaming bronze and tell its story to the ages. So, rest now, let the echoes of battle linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to wander among the sculptors who shaped Benin's legacy with their hands and hearts. As the echoes of the Agivbo warriors' chants settle into the warm night air, their bronze-tipped spears glinting in the memory of Ego Damigodo's fierce heart, let's turn our steps to a quieter corner of the kingdom, beyond the training grounds and the bustling market of Usblu, where young Uika's dreams of leadership were taking shape. Another craft was weaving the soul of the people into something eternal. Tonight, dear friends, let's wander into the smoky workshops of Ego Damigodo's sculptors, where hands shaped metal into stories that would outlast time itself. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle rhythm of this tale to carry you through the flickering glow of a kingdom forging its legacy. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that breathe life into forgotten times. In the heart of Ego Damigado, where the earth was rich with red clay and the air carried the faint tang of charcoal, the sculptor's quarter was a place of reverence and mystery, tucked away near the Ogasos court. The workshops were simple structures of mud brick and thatch, their roofs blackened by years of smoke. Here, the air hummed with the clink of hammers and the soft hiss of molten metal meeting cool water. The sculptors, known as Ijon Iramwan, were more than craftsmen, they were keepers of history, their hands guided by the spirits to capture the essence of God's ancestors and kings in bronze and brass. The art of bronze casting in Ego was a sacred act, born from techniques passed down through generations and refined by contact with distant lands. The sculptors used the lost wax method, a process as intricate as it was magical. A craftsman named Osiro, whose fingers were calloused and stained with wax, would begin by shaping a figure in clay, his hands coaxing the form of a warrior or a deity from the soft earth. Over this, he layered beeswax, carving fine curve of a lip, the glint of an eye, the folds of a robe. Then came the clay mold, encasing the wax like a cocoon, baked until the wax melted away, leaving a hollow space. Into this Osiro poured molten bronze, heated in a furnace fed by charcoal and bellows, until the metal cooled and the mold was broken to reveal a figure that seemed to breathe with life. Each sculpture was a story. A plaque might show a warrior, like Okian, his spear raised in triumph, his face etched with the fierce pride of the Egibbo. Another might depict a priestess offering palm wine to Olakan, her eyes serene, her hands outstretched in devotion. These works adorned the Ogasos court, their surfaces gleaming in the torchlight, telling tales of battles won, gods honored, and ancestors remembered. The people believed these sculptures held power, that the spirits of those depicted lingered within the metal, watching over the kingdom. A woman named Izigbe, who visited the court to plead for her family's land, would pause before a bronze head of an ancient ruler, whispering a prayer for his guidance, her fingers brushing the cool surface as if it could hear her. The sculptor's work was not without risk. The furnaces were unforgiving, and a single misstep could ruin days of labor. Once, a young apprentice named Igosa, eager to prove himself, overheated a mold, causing the bronze to crack as it cooled. The workshop fell silent, the other craftsmen staring as Osoro, his mentor, shook his head. "The gods see haste," Osoro said, his voice low but kind. "Patience is their gift." Igosa learned to slow his hands, to listen to the rhythm of the fire, and years later, his own plaques would hang in the court, a testament to his growth. But the dangers were not only physical. The Ijan Iranwin was said to commune with the spirits, and some whispered that a sculptor who failed to honor the gods might find his work cursed, the bronze twisting into shapes that brought misfortune. Young Uika, now nearing his teenage years, was drawn to the sculptor's quarter. Slipping away from the court, he'd stand at the edge of a workshop, watching Osoro pour molten metal, the glow casting shadows across the boy's face. The sculptors, unlike the warriors or priests, spoke to Uika as an equal, sharing stories of their craft. Osoro once showed him a small bronze figure of a leopard, its eyes inlaid with coral beads. "This is the spirit of the land," Osoro said, his voice a low rumble. "A king must be like the leopard, strong, silent, eternal." Uika held the figure, its weight grounding him, and began to see his future not just as a leader but as a symbol, a figure to be cast in the memory of his people. The sculptures were also a bridge to the divine. During the festival of the new Yam, the Ujen Yernwen unveiled new works, carried in procession to the court. The people gathered, their voices rising in song as a bronze plaque depicting the Ogiso was placed before the throne. The Owen priests blessed it with palm oil, chanting to bind the ruler's spirit to the metal. Uika, standing among the crowd, felt a chill as the priests' voices rose, sensing the weight of his own destiny. The sculptures were not just art, they were a promise, a vow that the kingdom's story would endure, even as the gods watched from the shadows. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep wandering through the glowing heart of Benin together as the smoke of the sculptor's furnaces curled into the night sky. Uika returned to the court, the image of the bronze leopard burning in his mind. The kingdom was growing, its stories etched in metal. But darker currents were stirring, rituals that demanded more than devotion, sacrifices that cast a shadow over the land. So, rest now, let the gleam of bronze linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to face the chilling rites that shaped Igodomigodo's soul. As the glow of the sculptor's furnaces fades into the quiet night, their bronze figures standing sentinel in the court of Igodomigodo, let's linger in the shadows that stretched beyond the workshops and the vibrant market. Young Uika, his heart stirred by the artistry of the Igon Yernwen and the strength of the warriors, was growing ever closer to his destiny as the first OBA. But in the heart of this budding kingdom, there was a darker thread woven into its solar thread of rituals that bound the people to their gods with offerings of blood and fear. Tonight, dear friends, let's tread softly into the sacred groves where the air grew heavy with secrets, where the price of divine favor was paid in ways that left whispers lingering in the dark. Settle in, let the world grow still, and allow this tale to carry you through the solemn pulse of Igodomigodo's hidden rites. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In Igodomigodo, the gods were not distant figures but ever-present forces, their will felt in the rustle of leaves, the sudden crack of thunder, or the stillness before a storm. The people lived in reverence, offering yams, goats, and palm wine at shrines carved with the faces of ancestors. But there were times when the gods demanded more, when the balance of the world seemed to teeter, and only the gravest offerings, they could restore it. These were the rituals of sacrifice, shrouded in secrecy, performed in the deepest parts of the forest where the light barely reached. The Owen priests, their white robes stained with earth and blood, were the keepers of these rites, their voices trembling with the weight of their duty. The need for sacrifice often came in times of crisis. A drought that withered crops, leaving fields cracked and barren, was seen as a sign of Ozonobo's displeasure. A plague that swept through a village, leaving mothers weeping over still children, might be blamed on an ancestor's anger. The Owen would gather in the court, their faces grim, and cast cowrie shells to divine the god's will. Sometimes, the answer was simpler: ram or a cow. Its throat slit under the moonlight, its blood soaking the earth as the priests chanted. But there were whispers, passed in hushed tones, of darker rites, when the gods called for a human life, to appease their wrath. One such story lingered in the memory of the people. a tale of a man named Ove Biosa, a farmer whose lands bordered the Ovia River. When a flood swept away half his village, drowning crops and homes, the Owen declared it a punishment for a forgotten ritual. Ove Biosa, a man of quiet faith, volunteered to offer himself, believing his sacrifice would save his kin. The night was still, the air thick with mist, as the priests led him to a sacred grove. There, under a towering iroko tree, they bound his hands with palm fronds and chanted to the gods. The village woke to find the river calm, the flood receding, but Ove Biosa was gone. His family mourned in silence, their grief tempered by the belief that his blood had restored the gods' favor. Yet, the story left a chill, a reminder that the gods' love was as fierce as their anger. These rites were not spoken of openly. In the market of Uzulu, traders might lower their voices when discussing the groves, their eyes darting to ensure no priest was near. A woman named Igosa, who sold smoked fish by the river, once saw the Owen pass by, their faces hidden by hoods, carrying a bundle that seemed to move. She never spoke of it, but her hands shook as she packed her store that night, and she poured an extra libation of palm wine to the ancestors, praying for protection. The people loved their gods, but they feared them too, and the sacrifices would a shadow that hung over even the brightest days. Young Uika, now a teenager, felt this shadow keenly. He'd seen the priests' processions, their drums echoing through the night, and heard the whispers that followed. His mother, Ethi, taught him to honor the gods, but she also cautioned him to listen to the people's hearts. One evening, as they sat by a fire, Ehi spoke of a time when her own brother had been chosen for a lesser sacrifice, a ritual to bless the harvest. He returned, but his eyes were never the same, haunted by what he'd seen in the grove. "The gods give us strength," Ethi said, her voice soft, "but a king must know when their price is too high." Uika nodded, his young mind grappling with the balance between faith and fear, power and mercy. The court itself was a stage for these rituals. During the festival of the New Yam, the Owen performed a public sacrifice, offering a goat to ensure the crop's bounty. The people gathered, their voices rising in song, but their eyes were wary, watching the priest's every move. Uika stood among them, his heart torn between awe and unease. He saw the power of the rituals, how they bound the people to the gods, but he also saw the fear in their faces, the unspoken question of who might be next. The bronze plaques in the court, crafted by the Oijan Iranwen, showed scenes of sacrifice figures kneeling before altars, their faces serene but their hands bound. Uika wondered if he, as king, could honor the gods without sowing fear. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the shadowed heart of Benin together. As the smoke of the sacrificial fires curled into the night, Uika lay awake, the weight of his future pressing against him. The kingdom was strong, its warriors fierce and its sculptors skilled, but its soul was tied to the gods and to the world beyond its borders. Traders from distant lands were beginning to arrive, their ships gliding up the rivers, bringing goods and ideas that would challenge Igodomigodo's ways. So, rest now, let the whispers of the groves linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to follow the paths of those who connected the kingdom to the wider world. As the somber whispers of Igodomigodo's sacrificial groves fade into the stillness of the night, their weight lingering in the air like the scent of burnt offerings, let's turn our steps toward the shimmering rivers that carried the kingdom's ambitions outward. Young Uika, now a youth standing at the threshold of leadership, was learning the delicate balance between honoring the gods and listening to his people's hearts. But the world of Igodomigado was not bound by its forests and villages alone, stretched toward distant horizons, where rivers met the sea and strangers brought treasures that would reshape the kingdom's future. Tonight, dear friends, let's drift along the waterways to meet the traders who linked Igodomigodo to a wider world, their sails catching the wind as they carried both promise and peril. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow this tale to carry you through the gentle lapping of waves and the hum of far-off voices. If you're finding peace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. The rivers of Igodomigodo, like the Ovia and the Ikpoba, were the kingdom's lifelines, their waters glinting under the sun as they wound through dense forests toward the distant coast. By the late 12th century, these waterways were more than paths for fishermen or routes for village trades. They were gateways to a world beyond the horizon. Traders from the coast, and even farther lands, began to arrive in canoes and small ships, their hulls laden with goods that dazzled the eyes of Igodomigodo's people. These strangers brought cowrie shells that gleamed like tiny moons, beads of glass and coral that caught the light, and bolts of cloth dyed in colors unknown to the local weavers. In return, they sought the kingdom's riches, ivory from the elephants that roamed the forests, pepper that burned the tongue, and the fine bronze works of the Iganiranwen. The trading hub was the river port of Uaton, a bustling settlement, where the forest gave way to mangroves and the air was thick with the briny scent of the sea. Here, the people of Igodomigado met men from the Niger Delta, their speech quick and musical, and occasionally traders from even farther afield, men with strange accents who spoke of lands where the sun burned hotter or the earth was dry as bone. A trader named Ephosa, his canoe piled high with dried fish, was a familiar face at Yucatan. He'd row upriver from the coast, his arms strong from years of battling currents, and barter his catch for yams and palm oil. Ephosa's stories were as valuable as his goods. He spoke of cities where houses were built of stone, of markets where gold was traded like grain, and of seas so vast they swallowed the horizon. The villagers listened, wide-eyed, their imaginations with soaring beyond the forest's edge. But trade was not without its tensions. The arrival of outsiders brought wealth, but it also stirred unease. The clans of Igbo were fiercely protective of their trade routes, and disputes over who controlled the flow of goods could spark violence. One season, a trader from the Delta, a man named Odion, arrived with a cargo of rare blue beads, claiming they came from a land across the sea. His price was steep, and when a local chief, Omor, refused to pay, a brawl erupted at the port. Spears were drawn, and blood stained the riverbank before the Ogasos guards restored order. Odion left with his beads, but the incident left a mark. Whispers spread that the gods disapproved of greed, and the Oan priests called for a cleansing ritual to appease the river spirits. The people of Yucatan poured palm wine into the water, their chants rising as the current carried their offerings away. Yuika, now a young man, visited Yucatan with his mother, Ehi, to see the traders for himself. The port was a world apart from the quiet of the court or the clamor of Usulu's market. Canoes bobbed in the water, their hulls carved with patterns of fish and stars. Traders shouted over each other, their voices a tangle of languages, while women wove through the crowd, balancing baskets of smoked catfish on their heads. Yuika watched as a foreign trader, his skin darkened by the sun, offered a handful of coral beads to Ihi. She examined them, her eyes sharp, and bartered for a lower price, teaching Yuika the art of patience in trade. "The river brings wealth," she said, her voice low, "but it also brings change. A king must know both." Yuika nodded, his gaze fixed on a ship in the distance, its sails catching the wind like a bird taking flight. The traders also brought stories that unsettled the court. They spoke of powerful kingdoms to the north, where horses thundered across open plains, and of coastal peoples who built great canoes to challenge the sea itself. These tales reached the Ogaso, who saw both opportunity and threat. He sent emissaries to the Delta, bearing gifts of bronze plaques to forge alliances, but the priests warned that outsiders could anger the gods. A diviner named Osahan cast his cowrie shells and declared that the river spirits demanded vigilance. "The sea brings gifts," he said, "but it also carries shadows." The Ogaso ordered the Agivbo warriors to patrol the riverbanks, their spears gleaming as a warning to any who might bring trouble. One trader, a woman named Amens from a coastal clan, became a bridge between worlds. She arrived each season with shells and salt, her canoe guided by a young boy who sang to calm the river spirits. Amens was known for her fairness, but also for her sharp tongue. She once scolded a chief for trying to cheat her, her words cutting like a blade. The people admired her, and her stories of the sea, where fish glowed like stars in the deep, captivated Yuika. She told him of a world where trade could unite people, but only if trust was stronger than fear. Her words stayed with him, shaping his vision of a kingdom that could stand tall among others, not just in battle but in the exchange of goods and ideas. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep sailing through the vibrant heart of Benin together, as the river's gentle ripples carried Amens's canoe back to the sea. Yuika stood on the banks of Yucatan, his mind alight with dreams of a kingdom connected to the world. But back in the heart of Igbo, another center of power was calling, the palace of the Ogaso, a labyrinth of secrets and ambition where Yuika's destiny was being forged. So, rest now, let the river's song linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to step into the shadowed halls where the future of Benin was shaped. As the gentle ripples of the river at Yucatan fade into the soft hum of the night, carrying the voices of traders and their dreams of distant lands, let's turn our steps inward, back to the heart of Domagodo. Young Yuika, his mind stirred by the tales of the sea and the wealth it brought, was beginning to see the vast web that connected his people to the world. But it was within the walls of the Ogaso's palace, a place of shadow and splendor, that the true pulse of power beat. Tonight, dear friends, let's wander through the twisting corridors and torchlit halls where ambition, loyalty, and secrets shape the kingdom's future. Settle in, let the world grow quiet, and allow this tale to carry you through the intricate dance of a court on the cusp of greatness. If you're finding peace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. The palace of the Ogiso was no mere building, it was a world unto itself, a sprawling compound of mud brick walls, their surfaces smoothed by skilled hands and adorned with patterns of red earth and white chalk. Its roofs, thatched with palm fronds, sloped low to shield against the rains, and its courtyards buzzed with the comings and goings of nobles, priests, and warriors. The air was heavy with the scent of burning incense, mingling with the earthiness of freshly baked clay and the faint sweetness of palm wine offered to guests. At its center stood the throne room, where the Ogiso sat on a seat carved from a single iroko tree, its surface inlaid with cowrie shells that gleamed like stars in the torchlight. To enter the palace was to step into a place where every glance, every word, carried the weight of power. The court was a tapestry of voices and agendas. Nobles from the strongest clans, their wrappers dyed in vibrant hues, vied for the Ogiso's favor. Their words honeyed but their eyes sharp. The Owen priests, clad in white, moved like shadows, their presence a reminder of the gods' watchful gaze. The Agivbo warriors stood guard, their bronze-tipped spears at the ready, while messengers darted through the corridors, carrying news from the river ports or the market of Usulu. Amid this bustle, a woman named Osorobo, the Ogiso's chief advisor, held sway. Her voice was calm but commanding, her mind as sharp as a blade. She could silence a room with a single look, and her counsel was sought on matters from trade disputes to divine omens. Yet, even Osorobo tread carefully, for the palace was a place where loyalty could shift like sand. Life in the palace was governed by ritual as much as by politics. Each morning the Ogiso emerged from his private chambers to receive offerings. From the priests a bowl of kola nuts, a jug of palm wine, a prayer to Asonabua for wisdom. The court watched in silence, their breaths held, as the Owen cast cowrie shells to divine the day's fortunes. One morning, the shells fell in a pattern that made the priests pause, their faces darkening. "A shadow looms," they whispered, and the Ogiso ordered extra sacrifices to appease the gods. The courtiers exchanged glances, wondering who or what had stirred the spirit's unease. Such moments were common, for the palace was a place where the divine and the human were ever entwined. For Yuika, now a young man of 16, the palace was both home and crucible. Raised under his mother Eki's watchful eye, he moved through the corridors with a quiet confidence, his lineage from Ife setting him apart, yet binding him to the court's expectations. The nobles watched him, some with hope, others with suspicion. For his father, Oranmian's brief rule had left a legacy of both promise and discord. Yuika spent hours in the throne room listening as Osorobo mediated disputes, a farmer claiming a noble had seized his land, a trader accusing another of shortchanging him in cowrie shells. He saw how power was wielded, not just with spears but with words, and how a single decision could ripple through the kingdom like a stone dropped in the Ovia River. One evening, a dispute tested the court's fragile harmony. A noble named Isis, voice loud with indignation, accused a rival clan of poisoning his well, claiming their envy had angered the gods. The Owen priests, their faces unreadable, suggested a ritual to cleanse the land, but Isis demanded retribution. The court buzzed with tension, courtiers whispering behind their hands, until Osorobo raised a hand for silence. "The gods see truth," she said, her voice steady. "Let the shells decide." The diviner cast them, and the pattern cleared Isis' rivals, but not before a warrior had to be restrained from drawing his sword. Yuika, watching from the shadows, saw the fragility of trust, and how fear could ignite like dry grass in the harmattan wind. Ethieva, Yuika's guide, took him aside that night. They sat in a quiet courtyard, the air cool and scented with jasmine. "The palace is a maze," she said, her eyes searching his. "A king must walk it with care, for every step is watched." Yuika nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He began to understand that leadership was not just about strength or divine favor, but about navigating the desires and fears of those around him. The bronze plaques on the palace walls, crafted by the Egan Iranwin, showed past rulers standing tall, but Yuika saw the shadows behind them, the unseen struggles that shaped their reigns. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video. And let's keep wandering through the shadowed heart of Benin together. As the torches in the palace flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, Yuika lay awake, his mind turning over the lessons of the court. The kingdom was growing, its rivers bringing wealth, its warriors standing strong, but the gods were restless, their voices stirring tales of wrath and retribution. So, rest now, let the palace's secrets linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to face the chilling legends of divine punishment that haunted Igudamagodo's soul. As the flickering torches of the Ogiso's palace cast their dancing shadows across the mud-brick walls, their light fading into the quiet of the night, let's linger in the heart of Igudamagodo, where young Yuika was learning to navigate the labyrinth of power and ambition. The palace, with its whispers of intrigue and the weight of divine favor, was shaping him into the leader he would become. But beyond its walls, in the villages and forests, another force held sway, the stories of the gods' wrath, tales that sent chills through even the bravest hearts. Tonight, dear friends, let's tread softly into the realm of legends, where the spirits of Igudamagodo meted out justice with fire and shadow, binding the people in awe and fear. Settle in, let the world grow still, and allow this tale to carry you through the haunting echoes of divine retribution. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In Igudamagodo, The gods were never far away. Their presence was felt in the rustle of palm fronds, the sudden hush before a storm, or the flicker of a fire that burned too bright. The people lived with one eye on the earth and another on the unseen, knowing that the spirits, whether benevolent ancestors or vengeful deities, watched their every step. The Owen priests taught that the gods rewarded devotion but punished those who strayed from their path. These lessons came not just from rituals but from stories, passed down by griots and whispered by mothers to their children, tales of divine wrath that served as both warning and bond for the community. One such legend told of a man named Ogu, a hunter whose skill with a bow was unmatched. His arrows could fell a leopard in mid-leap, and his name was sung in the market of Uzulu. But Ogu grew proud, boasting that his skill rivaled that of Ogun, the god of iron and war. One moonless night he ventured into a sacred grove, ignoring the priest's warnings, to hunt a sacred antelope said to be Olukun's own. As he drew his bow, the forest fell silent. No crickets, no wind, only the weight of unseen eyes. His arrow flew, but it turned mid-air, piercing his own chest. The village found him at dawn, his body cold, his bow shattered. The Owen declared it the work of Olokun, a reminder that no man could challenge the gods. From that day, hunters poured libations before entering the forest, their voices trembling with respect. Another tale spoke of a village called Ike nestled near the Ikpoba River. Its people, prosperous from trade, grew careless, neglecting the shrines of their ancestors. They feasted while the altars stood empty, their offerings forgotten. One night a fire swept through Ike, its flames unnaturally bright, leaping from hut to hut as if guided by an unseen hand. The villagers fled, their cries swallowed by the roar of the blaze. When the ashes settled, the shrine stood untouched, its wooden figures gleaming as if newly carved. The Owen said the ancestors had spoken, their wrath cleansing the village of its pride. The survivors rebuilt, but they never forgot to honor the spirits, their hands steady as they placed kola nuts and palm wine at the altar. These stories were not mere tales, they were the heartbeat of Igbo-Domigodo, shaping its moral code. In the market, a trader might pause mid-barter to warn a friend against greed, citing Ogu's fate. At night, children huddled close to their mothers, their eyes wide as they heard of Ika's flames. The legends were a reminder that the god's favor was fragile, easily broken by hubris or neglect. Even the Igbo warriors, fierce as they were, bowed their heads when passing a shrine, their spears lowered in respect. The fear of divine punishment was a thread that wove through every life, from the humblest farmer to the nobles in the Ogaso's court. Uika, now a young man of 17, absorbed these stories like the earth soaking up rain. He'd sit with the elders in the palace courtyards, the air cool with the scent of jasmine, listening as they recounted tales of the god's justice. One evening, an old priest named Io shared a story of a forgotten Ogaso who defied the gods by refusing a sacrifice during a drought. The rains ceased, the rivers dried, and the people starved until the Ogaso himself vanished, swallowed by the forest, his name erased from memory. Io's voice was low, his eyes fixed on Uika. A king serves the gods, he said, but he must also serve the people. Uika felt the weight of those words, sensing the delicate balance he would one day have to maintain. The court itself was not immune to these legends. When a noble named Osagi fell ill, his body wasting despite the priest's prayers, whispers spread that he had offended Isu, the trickster god, by lying in a land dispute. The Owen performed a ritual, their chants rising as they burned herbs and scattered ash, but Osagi's strength never returned. His death sent a ripple through the palace, courtiers murmuring prayers to ward off similar fates. Uika watched, his heart heavy, seeing how fear of the gods could both unite and divide. His mother Ethi took him aside, her voice soft as she spoke of her own faith. "The gods guide us," she said, "but fear can blind us. A king must see clearly." Her words stayed with him, a beacon as he navigated the palace's shadows. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the haunted heart of Benin together as the stars gleamed. Above Igbo-Domigodo, there light a faint echo of the god's watchful eyes. Uika lay awake, the legends of divine wrath echoing in his mind. The kingdom was strong, its rivers flowing with trade, its warriors fierce, but another force was rising, one of women who wielded power in the shadows, shaping the court with their wisdom and will. So, rest now, let the tales of the gods linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to meet the queen's mother of Benin, whose strength rivaled that of any king. As the haunting tales of divine wrath fade into the starlit night, their echoes lingering like a distant drumbeat over Igbo-Domigodo, let's linger a little longer in the heart of this vibrant kingdom. Young Uika, now a young man of 17, was learning the way to leadership amidst the palace's intrigues and the gods' unyielding gaze. But power in Igbo-Domigodo was not held by men alone. In the shadows of the court, where bronze plaques gleamed and priests whispered, women of strength and wisdom shaped the kingdom's path with quiet resolve. Tonight, dear friends, let's walk through the courtyards and chambers where the queen's mother of Igbo-Domigodo wielded influence that rivaled the might of warriors and the sanctity of priests. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle rhythm of this tale to carry you through the lives of these remarkable women, whose voices echoed in the heart of a kingdom on the rise. If you're finding peace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In Ego de Magodo, the role of women extended far beyond the hearth or the market stall. While men like the Ogaso and his warriors held the spotlight of power, women, particularly those known as the Ioba or Queen's Mother, were the unseen pillars of the court. These women were not mere consorts. They were advisors, mediators, and, at times, the moral compass of the kingdom. Their influence was woven into the fabric of daily life. From resolving disputes in the villages to guiding the spiritual balance of the court, the Ioba were often the mothers or elder women of the ruling family, their wisdom earned through years of navigating the delicate dance of politics and faith. Their chambers, tucked within the palace's maze of mud-brick walls, were places of council where the air was scented with jasmine and the soft glow of oil lamps cast a warm light on their deliberations. One such woman was Eki, Uika's mother, whose quiet strength had already shaped the young prince's path. Eti was born of Igadomigodo's soil, her lineage tied to a powerful clan near the Ovia River. Her marriage to Orenmian, the prince from Ife, had been a union of alliance, but her true power lay in her understanding of her people. She moved through the palace with grace, her wrappers dyed in deep indigo, her coral beads clicking softly as she walked. Ihi was a listener, her eyes sharp as she observed the noble's squabbles or the priest's cryptic warnings. When a dispute arose over land between two clans, it was Ehi who suggested a compromise, dividing the plot and dedicating a portion to a communal shrine. The clans agreed, and the Owen priests praised her wisdom, saying the gods smiled on her judgment. Uika watched her, learning that power was not always loud, but often lay in the quiet art of persuasion. Another Ioba named Idia was a legend in her own time. Though not Uika's mother, she was a distant aunt, a woman whose presence commanded respect even among the fiercest warriors. Idia was known for her knowledge of herbs, learned from her grandmother, who had been a healer in a village near the Ikapoba River. Her chambers were a haven of sense-crushed mint, dried ginger, and the earthy temps of bark steeped in water. When a fever swept through the palace, felling nobles and servants alike, it was Idia who brewed a potion from forest roots, saving dozens of lives. The people whispered that she spoke with the spirits of the earth, her hands guided by their wisdom. Yet Idia was no mere healer. She was a strategist. When a rival clan threatened to block the trade route to Iwaton, Idia advised the Ogaso to send gifts of bronze plaques rather than warriors, turning enemies into allies. Her counsel was a reminder that strength could be wielded without a spear. The Ioba were also guardians of tradition. They oversaw the rituals that honored the ancestors, ensuring the kingdom's spiritual balance. During the festival of the New Yam, it was the Queen's Mother who led the women in weaving garlands of leaves, their hands swift as they chanted songs to Asanabua. These ceremonies were not just displays of faith but moments of unity, where the women's voices rose above the men's, binding the community in shared purpose. A young woman named Ozeza, trained under Idia's guidance, was tasked with leading a procession to the river, where offerings of palm oil were poured into the water. Her voice, clear and steady, carried over the crowd, and Uika, watching from the sidelines, felt a stir of pride. Ozeza's grace, he realized, was as vital to the kingdom as any warrior's spear. But the Ioba's influence was not without its challenges. The court was a place of competing ambitions, and not all welcomed the power of women. A noble named Oseron, known for his booming voice and quick temper, once scoffed at Idia's suggestion to delay a military campaign until the gods were consulted. "Women weave cloth, not plans," he said, his words echoing in the throne room. The court fell silent, the air thick with tension, until Idia fixed him with a gaze that seemed to pierce his soul. "The gods weave the fate of all," she replied, her voice calm but unyielding. The Ogso sided with Idia, and Oseron's face burned with shame. The incident became a story told in hushed tones, a reminder that the Ioba's wisdom was not to be underestimated. Uika, now on the cusp of manhood, spent more time with the Ioba absorbing their lessons. Eshi taught him to listen to the people's needs, while Idia showed him how to balance diplomacy with strength. One evening, as they sat in Idia's chamber, the air heavy with the scent of herbs, she shared a story of her own mother, who had mediated a peace between warring clans by hosting a feast under the stars. "A king's strength is in his heart," Idia said, her eyes meeting Yuka's, "but his wisdom comes from those who stand beside him." Yuka nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He began to see the Ioba not just as mothers or advisors, but as the backbone of the kingdom, their influence shaping its soul as surely as the bronze plaques or the warriors' spears. The Ioba also played a role in the palace's spiritual life. When the Owen priests warned of a coming storm, it was Ethi who organized the women to prepare offerings, baskets of yams, jugs of palm wine, and woven mats to lay at the shrines. The ritual was a quiet one, held at dawn with the women's voices rising in a soft chant that seemed to calm the restless sky. Uika watched, his heart stirred by the unity of the moment. and realized that the Ioba's power was not just in their council but in their ability to bring the people together. Their presence was a bridge between the court and the villages, between the gods and the earth. Yet the Ioba faced their own burdens. Ehi, though revered, carried the weight of raising a son destined for greatness. Her every decision scrutinized by the court. Idia, for all her wisdom, walked a fine line between advising the Ogiso and avoiding the envy of ambitious nobles. Their strength was quiet, but it was not without cost. Uika saw this in the lines on his mother's face, the moments when she sat alone, her eyes distant. He vowed to honor their legacy, to build a kingdom where women like Ihe and Idia could stand tall without fear of rebuke. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the resilient heart of Benin together. As the soft chants of the Ioba's rituals faded into the dawn, Uika stood in the palace courtyard, his heart full of their wisdom. The kingdom was growing, its rivers flowing with trade, its warriors fierce. But another moment was approaching, a great festival that would unite the people in celebration and devotion. So, rest now, let the voices of the Queen's mother linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to join the vibrant festival of Igu, where Igodomigodo's spirit shone brightest. As the gentle voices of the Ioba fade into the soft light of dawn, their wisdom lingering like the scent of jasmine in the palace courtyards, let's step out from the shadowed halls of power and into the vibrant heart of Igodomigodo. Uika, now a young man shaped by the lessons of his mother Ehi and the fierce resolve of women like Idia, was beginning to see the threads that wove his people together through trade, war, art, and faith. But there was one moment each year when the kingdom's soul shone brightest, when the divisions of clan and court melted away in a shared celebration. Tonight, dear friends, let's join the festival of Igu, where the people of Igu gathered under the stars to honor their gods, their ancestors, and the land that sustained them. Settle in, let the world grow quiet, and allow the rhythmic pulse of this tale to carry you through the colors, sounds, and stories of a festival that bound a kingdom in joy and reverence. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. The festival of Igu was the heartbeat of Igodomigodo, a celebration held at the cusp of the harvest season, when the yams were plump in the fields and the air was thick with the promise of abundance. It was a time to give thanks to Osanobua, the supreme creator, and to the ancestors who watched over the land. The festival spanned 7 days, each filled with rituals, dances, and feasts that transformed the villages into a tapestry of sound and color. From the market of Usulu to the riverbanks of Uatan, the people prepared for weeks, weaving garlands of palm leaves, dyeing cloths in vibrant hues of indigo and ochre, and practicing songs that had been sung for generations. The air buzzed with anticipation, the scent of roasting yams and smoked fish mingling with the sweet tang of palm wine. The festival began at dawn, with the first light filtering through the forest canopy, casting golden streaks across the central clearing of Igod. The Owan priests, their white robes glowing in the early sun, led a procession from the Ogisos palace to a sacred grove, their chants rising like a tide. Behind them followed the Ioba, their coral beads clicking softly, and the nobles, their wrappers adorned with intricate patterns. The people gathered, their voices joining in a song that praised the earth's bounty and the god's mercy. A woman named Ogosa, a weaver whose hands could craft cloth as fine as a spider's web, stood among the crowd, her young daughter clutching her hand. Ogosa's eyes shone with pride as she sang, her voice weaving into the chorus, a reminder that the festival was as much for the common folk as for the court. Each day of Igu brought its own rituals. On the first day, the priests offered a ram at the shrine of Osanobua, its blood pooling in the earth as a prayer for prosperity. The crowd watched in reverent silence, their breaths held as the Owen scattered kola nuts and poured palm wine over the altar. By the second day, the mood shifted to celebration. Drummers filled the clearing, their hands a blur as they beat rhythms that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the land. Young men and women danced, their bodies swaying in patterns that mimicked the planting and harvesting of crops, their laughter rising above the drums. A dancer named F, his torso painted with white chalk, moved with such grace that the crowd swore he was touched by Esu, the trickster god. F's sister Adesua joined him, her movements sharp yet fluid, her wrapper swirling like a river in flood. The siblings' dance became a story told for years, a symbol of the festival's power to unite. The Ioba played a central role, their presence lending the festival a sense of continuity. Eti, Uika's mother, led the women in a procession to the river, where they poured libations of palm oil into the water, their voices rising in a song to Olakan, the god of the sea. The river shimmered under the sun, as if responding to their prayers, and the women returned with baskets of fish, a gift from the deity. Idia, the revered queen mother, oversaw the preparation of the communal feast, her hands guiding the younger women as they roasted yams and pounded cassava into food. Her laughter, rare but warm, echoed through the courtyard, and the people felt the god's favor in her presence. Uika watching from the sidelines, saw how the Iobe's leadership turned the festival into a bridge between the court and the people, their strength a quiet force that held the kingdom together. But the festival of Igu was not without its shadows. The gods, ever watchful, demanded respect, and the priests reminded the people of the tales of divine wrath. On the fourth day, a ritual was held to honor the ancestors, a solemn moment when the clearing fell silent. The Owen recounted the story of Ika's burning, a warning of what happened when the spirits were neglected. A young man named Osaritan, a farmer who had skipped the previous year's offerings, felt the weight of the priest's words. He approached the shrine that night, his hands trembling as he placed a yam at the altar, whispering a prayer for forgiveness. The crowd watched, their eyes soft with understanding, for the festival was a time to mend bonds with both the living and the dead. Ika, now standing tall among the court, took part in the festival for the first time as a man, not a boy. On the fifth day, he joined the young warriors in a mock battle, their wooden spears clashing as they honored the Egavo's strength. The crowd cheered, but Uika's eyes were on his mother, who nodded from the sidelines, her pride tempered by a reminder to stay humble. Later, he sat with Idia, listening as she spoke of past festivals, when the Ogaso himself danced with the people, a rare moment of unity. A king is not above his people, Idia said, her voice low but firm. Igu shows us that. Uik felt the truth of her words, sensing that the festival was not just a celebration but a lesson in leadership, one he would carry as he stepped closer to the throne. The final day of Igu was a spectacle of unity. The Ogaso emerged from the palace, his robe adorned with coral beads, and walked among the people, a rare sight that drew gasps and cheers. He blessed the harvest, his voice carrying over the crowd, and offered a prayer for the kingdom's future. The bronze plaques, crafted by the Ujan Uranwin, were unveiled, depicting scenes of the festival dancers, priests, and the Ogaso himself, their forms eternalized in metal. The people feasted under the stars, sharing plates of pounded yam and egusi stew, their laughter mingling with the crackle of fires. A griot named Omareg, his voice rich as the night, sang of Igodo, the first leader, and of the promise of a new era. Uika, sitting among the crowd, felt the weight of that promise, his heart stirring with the dream of a kingdom united. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep dancing through the vibrant heart of Benin together. As the fires of Igu burned low, their embers glowing under a sky thick with stars, Uika stood at the edge of the clearing, his mind alive with the festival's lessons. The kingdom was strong, its people bound by faith and celebration. But within the palace, darker currents were stirring, intrigues that threatened to unravel the unity Igu had forged. So, rest now, let the songs of the festival linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to face the schemes and ambitions that tested Igo Demigodo's heart. As the vibrant echoes of the festival of Igu fade into the warm embrace of the night, the embers of its fires casting a soft glow over Igo Demigodo's heart, let's linger in the kingdom where young Uika stood poised on the edge of his destiny. The festival had woven the people together in song and celebration, their voices rising under the stars. But within the mud-brick walls of the Ogasa's palace, a different rhythm pulsed, one of whispers, ambition, and secrets that could unravel the unity so carefully forged. Tonight, dear friends, let's slip into the shadowed corridors of the court, where loyalty was tested and the price of power was paid in trust and treachery. Settle in, let the world grow still, and allow the quiet cadence of this tale to carry you through the intricate dance of intrigue that shaped the soul of a kingdom on the rise. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. The palace of the Ogaso was a labyrinth of power, its courtyards and chambers alive with the hum of ambition. By day the air was filled with the scent of burning incense and the soft clink of coral beads, as nobles, priests, and warriors moved through their roles like dancers in a carefully choreographed ritual. By night, however, the palace transformed into a place of whispers, where every shadow held a secret, and every word carried the weight of intent. The Ogaso, though revered as a leader touched by the gods, was not unchallenged. His court was a tapestry of alliances and rivalries woven from the ambitions of clans, the council of the Ioba, and the cryptic warnings of the Owen priests. To rule was to balance these forces, and even the strongest leader could falter under their strain. At the heart of the court was Osorobo, the chief advisor whose calm voice and piercing gaze had guided the Ogaso through countless disputes. Her influence was a steadying force, but it also bred envy. A noble named Izabua, whose clan controlled rich yam fields near the Ikepoba River, saw Osorobo's power as a threat to his own. Izabua was a man of charisma, his laughter loud in the throne room, his wrappers adorned with intricate patterns that spoke of wealth. But beneath his charm lay a restless ambition. He believed the Ogaso relied too heavily on women like Os and the Ioba, and he whispered to his allies that a stronger hand, his own, perhaps could lead Igo Domigodo to greater glory. His words were careful, spoken over cups of palm wine in the quiet corners of the palace, but they spread like ripples in a still pond. The court was no stranger to such intrigues. A year before, a dispute over trade rights at Yuatan had sparked a feud between two nobles, each accusing the other of bribing the port's overseers. The Ogaso, advised by Osorobo, had settled the matter by redistributing the rights. But the losing noble, a man named Osagi, never forgot the slight. He began to gather supporters, meeting in secret under the cover of night, their voices low, as they planned to undermine the Ogaso's authority. Osagi's sister, a weaver named Omarui, was his eyes and ears in the market of Usulu, where she listened to the traders' grumbles and reported back. The people grow restless, she told him, her hands busy with her loom. They say the gods favored the Ogiso, but the nobles grow bold. Osagi nodded, his mind turning over plans that could shift the balance of power. Yuika, now 18 and increasingly present in the court, felt the undercurrents of these tensions. His mother, Ethi, had taught him to watch and listen, to see the unspoken alliances in a noble's glance or the hesitation in a priest's words. He spent hours in the throne room, standing beside the bronze plaques that depicted past rulers, their faces serene but their reigns marked by struggle. One evening, as the court debated a new tax on river trade, Yuika noticed Isabua's eyes linger on Osorobo, his smile tight. Later, Ehi pulled him aside in a quiet courtyard, the air heavy with the scent of blooming hibiscus. "Power is a flame," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It warms, but it also burns. Trust carefully, my son." Yuika nodded, his heart heavy with the realization that leadership meant navigating not just the god's will but the ambitions of men. The Owen priests, too, played their part in the court's intrigues. Their divinations, cast with cowrie shells and red in the flicker of torchlight, could sway the Ogiso's decisions. A priest named Osahan, whose voice was as deep as the river's current, once declared that the gods opposed a proposed alliance with a coastal clan. The nobles who favored the alliance, including Isabua, bristled, accusing Osahan of bias. The priest stood firm, his white robe stark against the palace's red earth walls, and warned that defying the gods would bring ruin. The alliance was abandoned, but Isabua's resentment grew, his whispers spreading to other nobles who felt the priests held too much sway. The court was a delicate balance, and every decision risked tipping it into discord. One incident brought these tensions to a head. A drought struck Igodomagodo, the fields turning brittle under a relentless sun. The people looked to the Ogiso for answers, their voices rising in the market as they demanded relief. Isabua saw his chance, proposing that the Ogiso distribute his personal stores of yams to the villagers. It was a bold move, one that painted him as a champion of the people, but it also challenged the Ogiso's authority. Osorobo, sensing the trap, advised caution, suggesting instead a ritual to appease Osanob. The Owen performed the ceremony, sacrificing a bull and scattering its blood in the sacred grove, but the rains did not come. Isavoir seized the moment, his voice ringing in the throne room. "The gods are silent because the Ogiso hesitates." The court buzzed, nobles whispering, and Yuika, watching from the sidelines, saw the danger in Isevbor's words, a spark that could ignite rebellion. Ethi and Idia the Ioba stepped into the fray. In a private meeting with the Ogiso, they urged him to act decisively. Idia, her voice steady as she crushed herbs in her chamber, suggested sending Agevbo warriors to protect the remaining crops, while Ihi proposed a festival to restore the people's faith. The Ogiso listened, his face lined with worry, and chose a middle path. He opened a portion of his stores and ordered a smaller ritual led by the Ioba to honor the ancestors. The people cheered, their hunger eased, but Azevbor's allies were not satisfied. They met in secret, their plans growing bolder, and whispers of a new leader, a noble, not a king, began to spread. Yuika, though not yet the Obie, felt the weight of these events. He walked the palace corridors, his sandals soft against the earth, and listened to the servants' murmurs, the nobles' veiled threats. One night he overheard Osagi speaking to a guard, his voice low. "The boy from Ife is not ready to." The words stung, but they also hardened Yuika's resolve. He sought out Osorobo, whose wisdom he trusted, and asked how to unite a divided court. She smiled, her eyes kind but sharp. "A king does not silence his enemies," she said. "He wins their hearts." Her words echoed Ehi's teachings, and Yuika began to see his path not just as a ruler, but as a unifier, a bridge between the old ways and the new. The intrigues of the court were a crucible, forging Yuika's understanding of power. He saw how the Ioba's quiet strength held the palace together, how the priest's divinations could both guide and divide, and how nobles like Azevbor wielded ambition like a blade. The bronze plaques on the palace walls, crafted by the Irinwen, showed rulers standing tall, but Yuika now understood the unseen battles they fought against rivals, against doubt, against the gods themselves. As he stood in the throne room, the air heavy with incense, he felt the stir of his own destiny, a fire kindled by the lessons of those around him. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep navigating the shadowed heart of Benin together. As the whispers of intrigue faded into the palace's quiet night, Yuika stood at the edge of a courtyard, his gaze fixed on the stars. The kingdom was strong, its festivals vibrant, its women wise. But another realm called to him, the sacred forests, where secrets older than the court were guarded. So, rest now, let the court's tensions linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to explore the mysteries hidden in the Selva Sagrada of Igor. As the whispers of intrigue in the Ogiso's palace settle into the quiet of the night, their echoes lingering like the faint glow of torches against the mud-brick walls, let's step beyond the court's labyrinth and into the wild heart of Igodom. Young Uika, now 18 and bearing the weight of a kingdom's hopes, was learning to navigate the ambitions and rivalries that threatened to fracture his people. But there was another realm, older and deeper than the palace, where the true soul of the land resided. Tonight, dear friends, let's wander into the sacred forests of Igodomagado, where the trees whispered secrets, the spirits lingered in the shadows, and the mysteries of the gods shaped the kingdom's destiny. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle rustle of this tale to carry you through the ancient wilderness that cradled a kingdom on the rise. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. The forests of Igodomagado were no ordinary woods. They stretched across the land like a living tapestry, their canopies of Iroko mahogany and silk cotton trees forming a green cathedral where sunlight barely touched the earth. The air was cool and heavy, scented with damp moss, wild orchids, and the faint musk of decaying leaves. Every rustle, every snap of a twig, carried meaning, a message from the spirits, a warning from the ancestors, or the soft tread of a leopard moving through the undergrowth. The people revered these forests as sacred, places where the veil between the human and divine was thin, where the gods walked and the past whispered to those who listened. To enter the sacred forest was to step into a world governed by its own rules. The Owen priests, their white robes stark against the green, were the keepers of these groves, guiding rituals that honored the spirits of the land. The most revered was the grove of Osanobua, a clearing deep in the forest where a massive Iroko tree stood, its roots twisting like the fingers of an ancient giant. Here, the priests offered sacrifices, goats, kola nuts, palm wine to ensure the gods' favor. The people believed the tree was alive with the spirit of the supreme creator, its branches swaying even when no wind blew. A farmer named Ovebu, whose fields bordered the forest, swore he heard voices in the night, soft chants that drew him to the grove's edge, though he never dared step inside without a priest's blessing. The forests were also a refuge for those who sought answers beyond the palace's reach. Healers like Idia the Ioba ventured into the wilderness to gather herbs, bitter roots for fevers, leaves that soothed burns, bark that eased a mother's labor. Idia taught her apprentice, a young woman named Ozaiza, to listen to the forest's rhythms, to know which plants the spirits favored. One morning, as they wove through the undergrowth, their baskets heavy with green, Idia paused by a stream, its water glinting like polished bronze. "The forest speaks," she said, her voice low, "but only to those who are still." Ozaiza nodded, her hands brushing a fern, and felt the pulse of something ancient, as if the earth itself were breathing beneath her feet. But the sacred forests were not always places of peace. They held secrets that could chill the heart. Stories told of a grove called Iki Adla, the place of sorrow, where the gods meted out justice to those who defied them. A hunter named Igorevba, known for his defiance, once ventured into Iki Adla to fell a sacred tree for his hut. The next dawn, his village found his bow and quiver at the grove's edge, but Igorevba was gone, his footprints ending abruptly in the soil. The Owen declared it the work of Isu, the trickster god, who guarded the forest's boundaries. From that day, hunters whispered prayers before entering, their hands clutching amulets carved with the symbols of Ogun. The story of Igorevba became a warning, told by mothers to keep children from straying too far. Their voices soft but urgent in the firelight. The forests were also a proving ground for the Igbo warriors, who trained in their depths to master the art of moving unseen. A warrior named Okian, his scars a testament to battles won, led young recruits through the trees, teaching them to read the forest's signs: a broken branch, a disturbed patch of earth. One evening, as the sun dipped below the canopy, Okian paused by a stream, his spear resting on his shoulder. "The forest is our shield," he told his men, his voice a low rumble, "but it is also our judge." The warriors nodded, their eyes scanning the shadows, knowing that the spirits watched their every move. A young recruit named eager to prove himself, once strayed too close to a forbidden grove. A sudden wind rose, shaking the trees, and Imade fled, his heart pounding, vowing never to tempt the gods again. Uika, now a young man standing tall and strong, felt the pull of the sacred forests. His mother Ehi had told him stories of their power, of how the gods spoke through the trees and the rivers. One day, guided by an Owen priest named Io Uika, ventured into the grove of Osanobua, his sandals sinking into the soft earth. The air was thick, the silence heavy, broken only by the distant call of a hornbill. Io led him to the great Iroko tree, its trunk wider than 10 men standing shoulder to shoulder. "Here," Io said, his voice barely a whisper, "the gods see your heart." Uika knelt, his hands touching the roots, and felt a tremor, as if the tree acknowledged his presence. He offered a kola nut, his fingers trembling, and prayed for the strength to lead his people. The moment stayed with him, a reminder that his destiny was tied not just to the palace but to the land itself. The forests also held secrets of the past, stories carved into the earth by those who came before. In a hidden clearing, the Igon era, sculptors had erected a shrine of bronze plaques, their surfaces depicting ancient rulers and their deeds. Uika, exploring with Osorobo, the chief advisor, found one plaque showing a king offering a leopard to the gods, its eyes inlaid with coral. "This is Igodo," Osorobo said, her voice warm with reverence. "He united our people, but the forest kept his secrets." Uika traced the plaque's edges, feeling the weight of history, and wondered what secrets he would leave for future kings. The forest, he realized, was not just a place of spirits but a keeper of the kingdom's soul, its stories etched in roots and bronze. Yet, the sacred forests were not without danger. Whispers told of a diviner named Osahan who ventured too deep, seeking visions from the gods. He returned wild-eyed, speaking of shadows that moved without form, of voices that sang in languages no one knew. The Owen banished him, fearing he had angered the spirits, and his hut stood empty, a warning to others. The people respected the forests, but they also feared them, knowing that their beauty hid a power that could both bless and curse. Yui, standing at the grove's edge, felt this duality, his heart torn between awe and caution, knowing that a king must honor the wilderness without being consumed by it. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep wandering through the sacred heart of Benin together. As the forest's whispers faded into the night, their secrets safe within the ancient trees, Uika returned to the palace, his mind alive with the mysteries of the wilderness. The kingdom was strong, its people united by festivals and guided by wise women. But a new figure was rising, a king whose name would echo through the ages, Oba Uer, whose reign would test the balance of fear and magic. So, rest now, let the forest's embrace linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to follow the rise of a ruler who shaped Igodomagodo's destiny. As the whispers of the sacred forests fade into the cool embrace of the night, their ancient secrets lingering like mist among the Iroko trees, let's return to the heart of Igodomagodo, where the pulse of a kingdom was quickening. Young Yu, now a man forged by the lessons of the palace, the market, and the wilderness, had laid the foundation for a dynasty that would transform the land. But the story of Igodomagodo, soon to be called Benin, was about to take a new turn with the rise of a ruler whose name would echo through the ages. Oba Uer, a king whose reign was marked by ambition, fear, and the magic that bound his people to him. Tonight, dear friends, let's walk through the streets and courtyards where Uer's shadow loomed large, shaping a kingdom with a vision as grand as it was formidable. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the steady rhythm of this tale to carry you through the rise of a king who redefined power in the heart of Africa. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. The transition from Uika's foundational reign to the era of Oba Uer was not a gentle one. Oika, the first Oba, had unified the clans, his bloodline from Ife lending him divine authority, but his death left a kingdom still finding its footing. The court was a cauldron of ambition, with nobles like Isabor and advisors like Osorobo vying to shape the future. Into this restless world stepped Uer, a descendant of Uika, whose rise to power was as much a tale of cunning as it was of destiny. Born as Noba, a prince of the royal line, Uer was a man of sharp intellect and unyielding will, his eyes burning with a vision of a kingdom that would outshine even the sacred city of Ife. Uer's path to the throne was fraught with peril. The oral histories, passed down like treasures through the griot songs, tell of a young prince who faced betrayal early in life. His elder brother Uefioken held the throne briefly, but his rule was weak, his decisions swayed by nobles who sought to enrich their own clans. A story whispered in the market of Usulu spoke of a night when Uer, then a prince, overheard a plot to poison him, orchestrated by a noble named Osagi whose ambition had grown since the days of the Ogus. Uer, guided by a diviner's vision, fled to the sacred forests, where he sought the protection of Osagi. For days, he lived among the trees, his only companions the spirits and a loyal warrior named Ochian, who brought him food and news. The forest, with its heavy silence and watchful shadows, became his refuge, and some said the gods themselves whispered to him, forging his resolve. When Uer returned, his presence was like a storm breaking over the palace. He confronted Uefioken, his voice steady but fierce, accusing him of weakness that endangered the kingdom. The court was divided. Some nobles, loyal to Uefioken, called for Uer's banishment, while others, wary of division, saw in him the strength of Ueka's legacy. The Owen priests, their cowrie shells cast in the torchlit throne room, declared that the gods favored Uefioken, sensing the tide turning, abdicated, retreating to a village where he lived out his days in obscurity. Uer ascended as Oba, his coronation a spectacle that drew the people from every corner of The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, and the drums beat a rhythm that seemed to shake the earth itself. Yue, clad in a robe of coral beads and leopard skin, stood before the throne, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if seeing a kingdom yet to be built. Yue's reign was marked by a vision that was both grand and ruthless. He saw Igodomagado not as a collection of villages but as a unified empire, a beacon of power that would command respect from distant lands. To achieve this, he reorganized the court, elevating loyal advisors like Osorobo and diminishing the power of nobles like Izevbo, whose ambition he mistrusted. He created the title of Iyas, a chief advisor akin to a prime minister, to ensure his decrees were carried out. A man named Ihigieta, a former Igbo warrior with a mind as sharp as his spear, was appointed the first Eis, his loyalty to Yue unwavering. The nobles grumbled, their influence curtailed, but Yue's presence was a force they could not defy. His voice, deep and resonant, could silence a room, and his gaze seemed to pierce the soul, as if he carried the god's judgment within him. The new Oba also strengthened the kingdom's defenses. Drawing on the lessons of the Egyptian warriors, he ordered the construction of massive earthworks, moats, and walls that encircled the central villages. Their red earth gleaming under the sun, a woman named Ogosa, a farmer whose lands lay near the new walls, watched as laborers toiled, their songs rising over the thud of hoes. She marveled at the scale of Yue's vision, but also whispered to her neighbors of the cost families displaced, fields lost to the moats. Yue, aware of the unrest, visited the villages, his presence commanding yet approachable. He spoke to the people, promising that the walls would protect them from raiders, and offered yams from the royal stores to ease their burdens. Ogosa, her hands calloused from years of planting, bowed to him, her heart torn between gratitude and loss. Yue's connection to the divine was another pillar of his reign. He was said to be a master of magic, his knowledge of rituals surpassing even the Oan priests. Stories told of a night when he stood in the grove of Osanobua, hands raised to the sky, calling down rain to end a drought. The clouds gathered, the air crackling with energy, and the rains came, soaking the parched fields. The people, gathered in the clearing, fell to their knees, their voices rising in praise. But Yue's magic was not always benevolent. To secure his rule, he introduced rituals that inspired both awe and fear, ceremonies where the Oan offered sacrifices under his command, their chants echoing through the night. A young priest named Osahan, who had once questioned Yue's methods, was silenced when a leopard appeared at his hut, its eyes glowing in the dark. The people whispered that Yue had summoned the beast, a warning to those who doubted him. Ioba, particularly Idia, played a crucial role in Yue's reign. As his mother, she was his closest confidant, her wisdom guiding his decisions. When nobles plotted against him, Idia uncovered their schemes. Her spies, women who moved unnoticed through the palace, bringing her whispers of betrayal. She advised Yue to host a feast, inviting his rivals to the palace, where he dazzled them with displays of bronze plaques and gifts of coral beads. The nobles, swayed by his generosity, pledged their loyalty, though Idia warned Yue to keep them close but never fully trusted. Her chamber, filled with the scent of herbs and the soft glow of oil lamps, became a sanctuary where Yue sought counsel, his mother's voice a steady anchor in the storm of leadership. Yue's ambition extended beyond Igodomigodo's borders. He strengthened ties with traders at Yuatan, sending emissaries with bronze works to coastal clans, forging alliances that brought wealth and influence. A trader named Amons, who had once captivated Yueka with tales of the sea, now bowed to Yue, her canoe laden with shells and glass beads from distant lands. Yue's vision was clear. Benin, as he began to call the kingdom, would be a power to rival the great cities of the north and the coast. But his reforms came at a cost. The people worked harder, their lives shaped by his decrees, and whispers of fear grew alongside those of admiration. A farmer named Overbiosa, whose son was conscripted to build the moats, prayed nightly at a shrine, asking the gods to temper Yue's ambition with mercy. Eweka's legacy lived on in Yue, who honored his ancestor by commissioning new bronze plaques that depicted the first Oba's coronation. These works, crafted by the Ijaneronwan, adorned the palace, their surfaces gleaming with stories of unity and strength. Yue, standing before them, felt the weight of his lineage, knowing that his reign would be judged not just by the gods but by the people he led. His rule was a delicate balance, fear to command respect, magic to inspire awe, and wisdom to hold the kingdom together. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the formidable heart of Benin together. As the stars shone over the newly fortified walls of Benin, Yue stood in the palace courtyard, his gaze fixed on the future. His reign was reshaping the kingdom, but new treasures were flowing in Corel, a symbol of wealth and power that would define Benin's glory. So, rest now, let the echoes of Yue's rise linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to follow the shimmering path of coral that wove through the kingdom's heart. As the towering presence of Oba Yue casts its shadow over the newly fortified walls of Benin, the starlit night settling over a kingdom transformed by his ambition, Let's drift from the palace's torchlit courtyards and the sacred groves where his magic took root. Uer's reign had reshaped Igodomagodo into a power to be feared and revered, its name now spoken with awe as Benin. But his vision stretched beyond the earthworks and the battlefield, reaching toward the shimmering rivers that carried treasures from distant shores. Tonight, dear friends, let's sail along those waterways to explore the commerce of Korola, jewel of the sea that became the lifeblood of Benin's wealth and a symbol of its divine power. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle lapping of this tale to carry you through the vibrant markets and sacred rituals, where Koro wove its spell over a kingdom in its prime. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In the heart of Benin, as Uer's reign solidified in the 15th century, the kingdom was no longer a mere cluster of villages but a burgeoning empire, its influence stretching from the forests to the coast. The rivers, particularly the Ovia and the waterways leading to Yuatan, were arteries of trade, pulsing with the exchange of goods that defined Benin's growing power. Among these treasures, none shone brighter than coral beads of vibrant red and pink, harvested from the depths of the sea, that carried both material wealth and spiritual significance. To the people of Benin, coral was more than ornament. It was a gift from Olokun, the god of the sea, a symbol of divine favor and royal authority that adorned the Oba and his court. The commerce of coral began at the river port of Yuatan, where traders like Amons, whose tales had once captivated a young Ueka, now arrived with canoes laden with these precious beads. The journey to acquire coral was arduous, requiring coastal clans to dive into the ocean's depths, their lungs burning as they pried the living jewels from rocky beds. Amends, her arms strong from years of rowing, would dock at Yuatan, her canoe piled high with baskets of coral, their colors catching the sunlight like embers. She bartered these for Benin's rich as ivory from the forest elephants, bronze plaques crafted by the Igan Iranwan and pepper that burned the tongue. With its heat, her voice, sharp yet warm, rang through the port as she haggled with local traders, her laughter a bridge between the sea and the land. Coral was not merely a commodity, it was a currency of power. In the palace Uer wore strands of coral beads that cascaded down his chest, each one polished to a gleam that rivaled the moon. The nobles followed suit, their wrappers adorned with coral embroidery, their status measured by the weight of their beads. A woman named Ogosa, whose family had once lost land to Uer's moats, now wove coral into her hair, her fingers deft as she crafted patterns that told of her clan's resilience. The people saw coral as a mark of the Arba's divine mandate, for only a ruler favored by Olokun could command such wealth. When Uer walked through the market of Usulu, his beads clicking softly, the crowd parted, their eyes wide with awe, their whispers praising the gods who had blessed their king. The trade of coral was not without its challenges. The coastal clans, who controlled the supply, were fierce negotiators, and disputes could flare like sparks in dry grass. One season, a trader named Odian arrived at Yuatan with fewer beads than promised, claiming a storm had scattered his divers. The local overseer, a man named Ihigiata, now the EAs under Uer, suspected deceit and demanded a search of Odian's canoe. The confrontation drew a crowd, their voices rising as Odian protested, his hands gesturing wildly. Ihigiata, his spirit his side, stood firm, his loyalty to Uer unwavering. The search revealed hidden coral, and Odian was fined, his reputation tarnished. The incident sent ripples through the trade network, reminding all that Benin would not tolerate betrayal. Amends, watching from her store, poured a libation of palm wine into the river, praying for peace among the traders. Uer understood the power of coral beyond its beauty. He used it to strengthen alliances, sending gifts of beads to neighboring kingdoms, their leaders swayed by the promise of wealth. A griot named Omereg, whose voice had once sung of Ueka's coronation, now composed songs of Uer's coral-clad court, his words spreading the Obar's fame. One such gift, a necklace of coral beads, was sent to a Yoruba chief in the north, who responded with a pledge of friendship and a caravan of salt. The exchange, sealed with a ritual led by the Owen priests, was celebrated in the palace, where bronze plaques were unveiled to depict the moment Uer standing tall, his beads gleaming as the chief bowed before him. The Eugen Iranwan sculptors worked tirelessly, their furnaces glowing as they cast these stories in metal, their hands guided by the same spirits that blessed the coral. The spiritual significance of coral was profound. The Owen priests taught that each bead was a drop of Olokin's blood, a fragment of the sea's power that connected the wearer to the divine. During the festival of Igu, coral was central to the rituals. The Ioba, led by Idia, adorned themselves with coral necklaces, their weight a reminder of their duty. Ehi, Ueka's mother, now an elder figure in the court, led a procession to the river, where she offered coral beads to Olokun, her voice rising in a chant that echoed across the water. The people watched, their hearts stirred by the sight, believing the beads would ensure the sea's favor for another year. A young woman named Ozazer, Idia's apprentice, stood beside her, her own coral beads a gift from the Oba, marking her growing role in the court. The moment was a bridge between generations, a testament to the women who carried Benin's spiritual legacy. But the commerce of coral also brought tension. The wealth it generated deepened the divide between the court and the common people. A farmer named Oviosa, whose son labored on Uair's moats, watched as nobles flaunted their coral, their wealth a stark contrast to his own struggles. He prayed at a shrine, his hands clutching a single bead he'd saved for years, asking the gods for fairness. Whispers of discontent grew in the villages, and Uair, ever vigilant, sensed the unrest. He ordered a distribution of coral beads to the village elders, a gesture of goodwill that quieted the murmurs but did not erase them. Idia, his mother, advised him to walk among the people, to show that his wealth was theirs as well. Uair listened, visiting Uslu with a retinue of warriors, his coral beads gleaming as he handed out gifts. The people cheered, but Ovi's eyes remained wary, a reminder that power, like coral, could dazzle but also divide. The coral trade also shaped Benin's art and rituals. The Ujan Iranwan began incorporating coral into their sculptures, inlaying beads into the eyes of bronze figures to give them life. A sculptor named Osaro, whose hands had once crafted a leopard for Uika, now created a plaque showing offering coral to Olokon, the beads glinting in the metal. The plaque, hung in the palace, became a symbol of the Aba's divine connection, its beauty a testament to Benin's growing wealth. The priests, too, wove coral into their ceremonies, using it to mark sacred spaces or to adorn altars. A diviner named Osahan, whose visions had once guided Uika, now cast coral beads alongside cowrie shells, reading their patterns to divine the kingdom's future. The beads, he said, spoke of prosperity but also of balance, a warning that Uika heeded, knowing his reign depended on both. Uair's use of coral extended to diplomacy within the court. When Izebua, the ambitious noble, questioned the Oba's policies, Uair gifted him a strand of coral, a gesture that silenced his complaints but bound him closer to the throne. The Eisehijata watched these moves with approval, his own coral beads a mark of his loyalty. The court, once a cauldron of intrigue, began to stabilize under Uair's hand. The coral a thread that wove loyalty and fear into a single tapestry. Yet, the Oba knew that true unity required more than gifts. It demanded a vision that included all his people, from the traders at Uatin to the farmers in the villages. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep sailing through the shimmering heart of Benin together. As the coral beads gleamed in the palace, their light a reflection of Benin's growing power, Uair stood in the throne room, his gaze fixed on the bronze plaques that told his story. The kingdom was thriving, its wealth and influence unmatched. But beneath the surface, voices of dissent were stirring, voices of the common people, whose dreams and struggles would test the Aba's vision. So, rest now, let the glow of coral linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to hear the quiet resistance of those who shaped Benin's soul from the shadows. As the shimmering glow of coral beads fades into the quiet night, their gleam a testament to Benin's rising wealth and power. Let's linger in the heart of this mighty kingdom, where Oba Uair's vision was forging an empire from the foundations. Laid by Uika, the palace, adorned with bronze plaques and pulsing with the commerce of coral, stood as a beacon of ambition, its walls echoing with the chants of priests and the footsteps of warriors. But beyond the grandeur, in the villages and fields where the common people toiled, a quieter pulse beat, one of struggle, resilience, and whispers of dissent. Tonight, dear friends, let's wander through the dusty paths and humble huts of Benin's people, where voices rose in quiet defiance, their dreams and burdens shaping the soul of a kingdom under the weight of its ruler's ambition. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle rhythm of this tale to carry you through the lives of those who lived in the shadow of greatness. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In the 15th century, under Oba Uair's iron hand, Benin was a kingdom transformed. The earthworks and moats that encircled the central villages stood as symbols of strength, while the coral beads adorning the court spoke of wealth that rivaled distant empires. Yet, for the farmers, weavers, and laborers who sustained this glory, life was a delicate balance of survival and sacrifice. The fields, once tended with songs of hope, now bore the scars of Uair's projects, lands lost to moats, crops requisitioned for the palace, and sons conscripted to labor or fight. The people revered their Oba, believing his rule was blessed by Olokon and Osanobua. But their hearts carried a quiet ache, a longing for their voices to be heard in a kingdom that seemed to grow ever more distant. In the village of Ike near the Ikepoba River, a farmer named Ovibiosa stood as a quiet leader among his kin. His hands, rough from years of planting yams, bore the weight of feeding a family while meeting the palace's demands. Uair's moats had claimed a third of his fields, forcing him to work longer hours under the unrelenting sun. At night, he gathered with neighbors around a flickering fire, the air thick with the scent of roasted cassava and the soft hum of crickets. Here, in the safety of shadows, they spoke of their struggles not with anger, but with a weary resolve. Oviosa's wife, Igosa, a weaver whose cloth was sold in the market of Uzulu, would lower her voice as she shared tales of traders overtaxed by the court, their earnings dwindling under new levies. The Orba builds walls, she said, her fingers twisting a thread, but who protects our homes? The group nodded, their eyes reflecting the firelight. Their silence is shared understanding. These whispers of discontent were not open rebellion but a quiet resistance, a refusal to let their lives be wholly consumed by the palace's demands. In another village, a young man named Imed, once a recruit under the warrior Okian, had returned from building the moats. His body lean from labor and his spirit heavy. He gathered the youth of his village, teaching them songs that praised the ancestors but also spoke of fairness, their voices rising softly under the cover of night. Imad's sister Ozeza, now a respected figure, trained by the Ioba Idia, carried these songs to the palace. Her coral beads a mark of her status, but her heart aligned with her people. She spoke to Idia, her voice steady but urgent, urging the court to ease the burdens on the villagers. Idia listened, her eyes sharp, and promised to counsel Uer, but the Oba's vision was vast, and change came slowly. The market of Usulu was another crucible of resistance. Traders like Omareg the Griot, whose songs had once celebrated Uica, now wove subtle critiques into his tales. Standing by his stall, his voice rich as he strummed a small harp, he sang of a farmer who offered his last yam to the gods, only to see his fields taken by the palace. The crowd listened, their laughter tinged with recognition, their hands clapping to the rhythm but their hearts heavy with truth. A woman named Adasua, who sold smoked fish, joined in, her voice bold as she recounted how the court's taxes had forced her to raise prices, driving away customers. The coral shines, she said to her neighbors, but it does not fill our pots. The market, once a place of unity, became a space where grievances were shared, not in shouts but in murmurs, passed from stall to stall like a gentle breeze. Uer was not blind to these stirrings. His spies, loyal servants who moved unnoticed through the villages, brought word of the people's discontent. The Ei's Ihijeta urged a show of strength, suggesting the Egavo warriors patrol the villages to quell dissent. But Idia, the Ioba, offered a different path. In her chamber, scented with crushed herbs and lit by oil lamps, she spoke to Uer of the people's loyalty. Fragile but deep, they love you, she said, her voice calm but firm, but they must also live. Uer, his coral beads glinting in the lamplight, listened, his mind torn between his grand vision and the needs of his people. He ordered a distribution of yams from the royal stores, a gesture that eased hunger but did not silence the whispers. Idia, ever wise, organized a council of village elders, inviting them to the palace to voice their concerns. Ufbiosa was among them, his voice steady as he spoke of lost fields, his hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. The council was a rare moment of dialogue, but it was not without tension. A noble named Isabua, whose ambition still simmered, saw the meeting as a weakness, a chance to stir further unrest. He whispered to his allies, suggesting that Uer's concessions showed a faltering hand. The Owen priests, led by Osahan, countered with a divination, casting coral beads and cowrie shells in the throne room. The pattern, they said, warned of division unless the Oba acted decisively. Uer, standing before the bronze plaques that depicted his coronation, chose the path of balance. He reduced taxes on traders for a season, earning cheers in Uzulu, but also strengthened the palace guard, a reminder of his authority. The people felt the relief, but they also saw the spears, their gratitude tempered by caution. In the villages, resistance took other forms. Women like Igasa began weaving patterns into their cloth, subtle designs of broken chains or open hands, symbols of hope that went unnoticed by the court but spoke volumes to those who understood. A healer named Osiratan, trained in the sacred forests, offered her remedies freely to those who could not pay. Her hut, a sanctuary where the poor found care and courage. She told stories of the old days, before Uer's moats, when the clans shared the land's bounty equally. Her words, soft but steady, inspired a quiet defiance, a belief that the gods favored the humble as much as the mighty. Children listened, their eyes wide, and carried these stories to their play, chanting rhymes that praised the ancestors but questioned the palace's demands. Uer, though a king of fear and magic, was not untouched by these voices. He walked among the people more often, his coral-clad figure a striking contrast to the dusty paths of the villages. One evening, he stopped at Ovibiosa's hut, accepting a cup of palm wine and listening as the farmer spoke of his son, now a laborer who dreamed of returning to the fields. Uer's face softened, and he promised to release the boy after the next harvest. Oviosa bowed, his heart torn between gratitude and wariness, knowing that a king's promise was as fragile as a clay pot. The encounter became a story told in Eke, a spark of hope that the Orba might yet hear his people. The Eigen Ironwind sculptors captured these tensions in their art. A new plaque, hung in the palace, showed Uer distributing yams to the people, his figure towering but his hands open, a gesture of unity. Yet, the plaque's edges bore faint patterns of struggling farmers, a subtle nod to the people's resistance. The sculptor Osaro worked under Yua's watchful eye, but his heart was with the villagers, his hands carving truths that the Obe might not see. The plaque, like the kingdom itself, was a balance of power and dissent, its bronze surface gleaming with both pride and pain. The resistance of the people was not a fire but a current, flowing quietly beneath the surface. It shaped Yue's reign, forcing him to temper his ambition with gestures of goodwill. The Ioba, particularly Idia, played a crucial role, their council a bridge between the palace and the villagers. Ehi, now an elder, spoke to Yue of Yue, dream a kingdom united not by fear but by shared purpose. Her words, like the coral beads she wore, carried the weight of history, urging Yue to listen to the voices that sustained his throne. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep wandering through the resilient heart of Benin together. As the fires of the villages burned low, their embers casting a soft glow over the weary faces of Benin's people, Yue stood in the palace, his gaze fixed on the bronze plaques that told his story. The kingdom was mighty, its coral trade flourishing, its walls strong. But a new challenge was looming: outsiders from beyond the rivers, whose arrival would test Benin's strength and spirit. So, rest now, let the voices of the people linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to face the dawn of a new era, where Benin met the world beyond its shores. As the quiet embers of village fires flicker in the night, their soft glow illuminating the resilient hearts of Benin's people, let's linger in the vibrant yet tense kingdom where Oba Yue's reign had woven a tapestry of power, coral, and whispered dissent. The voices of farmers like Ovibiosa and weavers like Egosa had stirred a current of resistance, their hopes and struggles shaping the soul of a land fortified by earthworks and adorned with bronze. But the rivers that carried coral and dreams also brought new current strangers from beyond the horizon, whose arrival would challenge Benin's strength and test the legacy of its kings. Tonight, dear friends, let's drift along the waterways of Yuetin and the shadowed paths of the palace, where the kingdom faced the dawn of a new era, one marked by curiosity, conflict, and the weight of change. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle rhythm of this tale to carry you through the twilight of Benin's ancient glory, where outsiders brought both promise and peril. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. By the late 15th century, Benin stood as a formidable empire, its moats and walls a testament to Oba Yue's vision, its markets brimming with coral beads and bronze plaques that told of a kingdom blessed by the gods. The rivers, particularly the Ovia, were lifelines that connected Benin to the world beyond, their waters glinting under the sun as canoes carried traders from the Niger Delta and, increasingly, from lands far across the sea. These outsiders were not the familiar coastal clans like those of Amens, but men with strange tongues and pale skin, their ships larger than any canoe, their sails catching the wind like great wings. They came from the north and west, from lands the Griots called the place where the sun sleeps, bringing goods that dazzled the eyeglass mirrors that captured faces, iron tools sharper than any forged by Ogun's devotees, and cloth woven so fine it seemed to shimmer like water. The arrival of these strangers, later known as the Portuguese, marked a turning point for Benin. The first ships docked at Yuetin in the waning years of Yue's reign, their crews stepping onto the riverbank with wary eyes and gifts of beads and wine. The port buzzed with curiosity, traders like Amens pausing their bartering to watch, as the outsiders, clad in heavy cloth despite the heat, offered their wares to a Higiator. The Iyes, as a Higiator, his coral beads gleaming against his dark skin, stood tall, his spear at his side, his gaze sharp as he assessed these newcomers. The people gathered, their whispers a mix of awe and suspicion, as the strangers presented a mirror to the Eis, its surface reflecting his stern face. Amens, ever bold, approached one of the men, her voice steady as she asked, "What gods do you serve?" The man, through a translator, spoke of a single god, a concept that puzzled the crowd, who knew Osanabua and Olokon as partners in the divine dance where, now an aging king whose coral-clad figures still commanded the palace. They saw both opportunity and threat in these outsiders. He summoned them to the court, a journey that took them through the earthworks and past the bronze plaques that lined the palace walls. The Portuguese, their boots sinking into the red earth, marveled at the kingdom's wealth, their eyes lingering on the coral and ivory that adorned the nobles. In the throne room, Yor sat on his Iroko throne, his gaze unyielding as the strangers bowed, their gifts laid before him: glassware, a silver cross, and barrels of a bitter drink they called wine. The Owen priests, led by Osahan, cast cowrie, shells to divine the god's will, their chants rising as they declared the outsiders' arrival a sign of change. Though whether for good or ill remained unclear, Yor, guided by Idia's counsel, accepted the gifts but demanded tribute in return: ivory, pepper, and slaves from the villagers, a trade that would soon cast a long shadow. The people of Benin felt the ripple of this encounter, In the market of Uzulu, traders whispered of the stranger's goods, their voices tinged with excitement but also fear. A weaver named Igosa, whose subtle patterns of defiance were woven into her cloth, saw the glass beads the Portuguese offered and wondered if they would replace the coral that symbolized Olukun's favor. She spoke to her neighbors, her hands busy at her loom, her words careful. These men bring wealth, but what do they take? A question echoed the unease of many, for the outsider's arrival stirred memories of the sacred forest's warnings, where the gods punished those who strayed too far from tradition. Ovabiosa, the farmer, stood in his fields, his eyes on the horizon, praying that the gods would protect Benin from changes that felt too swift, too strange. The trade with the Portuguese grew, driven by Uer's ambition to strengthen Benin's place in the world. He sent emissaries, including a young noble named Omor, to negotiate with the strangers at Ueton. Omor, trained by the Agivo warriors, carried a bronze plaque as a gift, its surface depicting Uer's coronation, a symbol of the kingdom's might. The Portuguese, in turn, offered firearms, strange weapons that roared like thunder, their power both fascinating and terrifying. Yahigiata. The EIS tested one, its recoil jarring his shoulder, its smoke stinging his eyes. The crowd gasped, some whispering that the strangers had stolen Ogun's fire. Uer, wary of these weapons, allowed their trade but restricted their use to his elite warriors, ensuring his control over this new power. The Ijan Iranwan sculptors captured the moment in a new plaque, showing a warrior with a firearm, its barrel pointed skyward, a testament to Benin's ability to adapt, yet remain rooted in its traditions. But the outsiders brought more than goods. They brought ideas that clashed with Benin's soul. Their talk of a single god, their crosses of wood and metal, puzzled the Oan priests, who saw the world as a balance of many spirits. A diviner named Osahan, his voice trembling with unease, warned Uer that the stranger's beliefs could anger Osanabua, whose presence filled the sacred groves. Idia the Ioba counseled caution, urging Uer to honor the gods while learning from the newcomers. She organized a ritual at the river where coral beads were offered to Olokon, their red glow sinking into the water as a plea for balance. The people watched, their chants rising, but their eyes darted to the Portuguese who stood apart, their crosses glinting in the sun. Ozeza, Idia's apprentice, felt the tension, her coral beads heavy around her neck, a reminder of the kingdom's roots. Even as change loomed, the common people bore the brunt of this new era. The trade in slaves, demanded by the Portuguese, tore at the fabric of the villages. Families like Ovibias's lived in fear that their sons or daughters might be taken, their lives traded for the stranger's goods. In Eke, a young man named Imade, once a warrior, organized secret meetings, his voice low as he urged his kin to hide their strongest from the palace's recruiters. His sister, Ozeza, carried these concerns to Idia, her heart torn between her loyalty to the court and her love for her village. Idia listened, her face lined with worry, and promised to speak to Uer, but the Oba's vision was fixed on power, and the needs of the villagers often faded in its glare. Oviosa, standing by his shrine, offered a kola nut. His prayer whisper, "Let the gods guide our king, for his steps shake the earth." The palace itself was a crucible of change. Nobles like Isabua, ever ambitious, saw the Portuguese as a path to wealth, urging Uer to deepen the trade. Others like Osarobo, the chief advisor, warned of reliance on outsiders, her voice steady as she spoke of Benin's strength in its own traditions. Uer balanced these voices, his coral beads a symbol of his divine mandate, but his heart was heavy. He walked among the bronze plaques, their surfaces now showing scenes of trade with the strangers, and felt the weight of his choices. One night he stood in the grove of Osanabua, his hands touching the great Iroko tree, and prayed for wisdom. The forest was silent, but a soft wind stirred, as if the gods were listening, their answer yet to come. The people adapted, as they always had. Inusuli traders like Adesua began selling glass beads alongside coral, their stalls a mix of old and new. Griots like Omarek wove the strangers into their songs, their tales now speaking of ships that crossed the sea and men who carried fire in their hands. But the songs also carried a note of caution, a reminder of Ueka's dream, a kingdom united by its own strength, not the gifts of outsiders. The Ijan Iranwin crafted plaques that showed Uer meeting the Portuguese, their figures dwarfed by his coral-clad presence, a subtle assertion of Benin's supremacy. Yet the people felt the shift, their lives touched by a world that was both thrilling and unsettling. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep navigating the twilight heart of Benin together. As the stars gleamed over Benin, their light a faint echo of the coral that adorned its king. Uer stood in the palace, his gaze fixed on the bronze plaques that told of his reign. The kingdom was mighty, its rivers flowing with trade, its walls strong, but the outsider's presence was a tide that could not be turned. The legacy of the OBAs from Ueka to Uer would endure, its myths and magic woven into the soul of the land. So, rest now, let the echoes of this era linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon to trace the enduring myths that carried Benin's story into the ages. As the twilight of Benin's encounter with outsiders settles over the kingdom, the glint of Portuguese mirrors and the hum of their strange tongues fading into the warm night. Let's linger in the heart of a land forever changed yet steadfast in its soul. Oba Ue's reign, built on the foundations laid by Ueka and tested by the tides of foreign trade, had woven a tapestry of power, quarrel, and resistance that shimmered in the torchlight of the palace. But as the kingdom stood at the crossroads of an era, its story was not merely one of walls and wealth, it was a saga of myths, stories that would outlast the bronze plaques and echo through the ages. Tonight, dear friends, let's wander through the villages and sacred groves where the legacy of the Abas took root, their tales of fear, magic, and unity binding Benin's people to a past that still whispers in the present. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and allow the gentle cadence of this tale to carry you through the enduring myths that shaped a kingdom's soul. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In the late 15th century, Benin was a kingdom at its zenith, its earthworks towering, its markets brimming with coral and glass, its palace a labyrinth of power adorned with the Eugen Ironwood's bronze masterpieces. Yet, it was the stories, the myths spun by griots, whispered by mothers, and carved into the collective memory that gave Benin its heartbeat. These were not mere tales but the lifeblood of the people, binding them to their gods, their ancestors, and the Abas who stood as both rulers and symbols. From Ueka's divine lineage to Ue's reign of fear and magic, the myths of the Abas were a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a reminder that Benin's strength lay not just in its walls but in the stories that held its people together. One such myth centered on Ueka, the first Oba whose birth was said to have been heralded by a great storm. The elders told of a night when lightning split the sky, its bolts striking the Ovia River as Effie, his mother, gave birth in a hut near the sacred groves. The Owen priests, their voices trembling with awe, declared that Osanobua himself had blessed the child, marking him as the unifier of Ego. This story was sung by griots, like Omareg, his harp strumming softly in the market of Usulu where children gathered, their eyes wide as they imagined the young prince touched by the gods. A weaver named Egosa, her hands busy with threads, dyed in indigo, wove the lightning's pattern into her cloth, a subtle tribute to Ueka's legacy. The myth gave the people pride, a belief that their kingdom was born of divine will, its roots as deep as the Iroko trees in the forest. Myths were grander, darker, woven with threads of fear and wonder. The people spoke of his magic, how he could summon rain or command leopards with a whisper. One tale, told in hushed tones around village fires, recounted a night when Ue faced a rebellion led by the noble Izevbua, whose ambition had grown too bold. The story went that Ue stood in the grove of Osanobua, his coral beads glowing in the moonlight, and called upon Isu, the trickster god. A shadow moved through the palace, unseen but felt, and by dawn, Izabua's hut was empty, his followers swearing they saw leopard's tracks in the dust. The Owen priests, led by Osahan, declared it a sign of Ue's divine favor, and the people, awed and fearful, bowed lower when he passed. A farmer named Ovibusa, his fields still scarred by the moats, told this story to his children, his voice low, urging them to respect the Aba's power, even as his heart ached for fairness. These myths were not just stories but tools of unity. In the villages, where the burdens of Ue's taxes and conscriptions weighed heavy, the tales of the Obas reminded the people of their shared heritage. A young woman named Ozaza, now a respected figure in the court, carried these stories from the palace to her village of Eke. During the festival of Egu, she led a procession, her coral beads a gift from Edia, and recounted Ueka's unification. Her voice clear as she spoke of a kingdom stronger together. The crowd, their hands clapping to the rhythm of drums, felt the pull of the past, their grievances softened by the shared pride of Benin's glory. Ozaza's sister, Adesua, a fish trader in Usulu, wove these myths into her daily banter, her laughter warm as she told customers of Ue's rain-summoning magic, her words a reminder that the gods still watched over them. The eye sculptors played a vital role in preserving these myths. Their bronze plaques, hung in the palace and sacred groves, were more than arts, they were history made eternal. A sculptor named Osaro, whose hands had once crafted a leopard for Ueka, now created a plaque showing Ue standing before a storm, his arms raised as rain fell. The plaque, inlaid with coral beads, was unveiled during a ritual, the Owen priests chanting as palm oil was poured over its surface. The people gathered, their eyes tracing the bronze, and felt the weight of their king's power. Osaro's apprentice, a young man named Egarevba, worked tirelessly, his hands stained with wax, to capture the myths in metal. He carved a scene of Ueka's coronation, the lightning etched in fine lines, and dreamed of a day when his own work would tell Benin's story to future generations. The myths also served to balance the tensions of Ue's reign. The trade with the Portuguese, with its influx of glass and firearms, had stirred unease, and the people clung to their stories as anchors. A healer named Osarotan, who offered her remedies in the villages, told of a time when Ueka refused a foreign gift, saying only the gods' blessings were true. Her hut, filled with the scent of crushed herbs, became a place where the poor gathered, their voices soft as they shared tales of the Obe's strength. Or certain stories were a quiet resistance, a reminder that Benin's soul was its own, not borrowed from outsiders. Children, playing near her hut, mimicked Yua's gestures, their laughter a spark of hope that the kingdom would endure. The Ioba, particularly Adia, were keepers of these myths. In her chamber, lit by oil lamps, and heavy with the scent of ginger and bark, Idia taught Ozeza the stories of past Queen's mother, women who had guided kings through crises. She spoke of a forgotten Ioba who had calmed a warring clan with a feast, her wisdom saving countless lives. Idia's voice, steady and warm, carried the weight of history, and Ozeza, her coral beads clicking softly, vowed to pass these tales to the next generation. Yue, now an aging king, sought Idia's counsel, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his reign, for all its glory, had sown fear. Idia urged him to commission new plaques, ones that showed not just his power but his care for the people. Yue agreed, and the Ijin Yurin crafted scenes of the Oba distributing yams, their bronze surfaces a testament to a king who sought to balance might with mercy. The myths were not without their shadows. Stories of Yue's magic often carried a note of fear, tales of leopards and shadows that silenced dissent. In Ike, a farmer named Imade, once a warrior, whispered to his kin of a time when Yue's divinations had wrongly accused a village of disloyalty. The Egavo warriors had descended, their spears gleaming, and the village's shrine was left in ashes. Imade's voice was low, his eyes on the fire, as he urged his people to honor the Oba but guard their hearts. His sister, Ozeza, carried this story to the palace, her words careful as she spoke to Adia. The Ioba listened, her face lined with worry, and promised to soften Yue's hand, but the myths of fear endured, a reminder that power was a double blade. The arrival of the Portuguese added new layers to Benin's myths. Griots began to sing of ships that crossed the sea, their sails like clouds, and of men who carried fire in their hands. A trader named Amons, now a respected figure at Yuatan, told of a Portuguese captain who bowed to Yue, his cross gleaming, but his eyes wary. The story sung in the market became a myth of Benin supremacy, proof that even outsiders recognized the Aba's divine mandate. Yet, the trade in slaves, demanded by the foreigners, cast a shadow over these tales. Ovabiosa, his son, now returned from the moats, prayed nightly at a shrine, his single coral bead clutched tightly, asking the gods to protect his family from the stranger's hunger. His prayers, like the myths, were a thread that bound the people, their faith a shield against uncertainty. The Oan priests wove these new realities into their rituals. During a ceremony at the grove of Osanobua, Osahan cast coral beads and cowrie shells, his voice rising as he spoke of a kingdom tested by change but blessed by the gods. The people, gathered under the great Iroko tree, felt the weight of his words, their chants a plea for balance. The bronze plaques, now showing Yue with the Portuguese, became part of the mythos, their surfaces gleaming with stories of a kingdom that stood tall amid the tides of the world. The people, from farmers to traders, carried these myths in their hearts, their voices rising in song as they worked, their stories a testament to a legacy that would endure. If you're enjoying this tale, dear friends, please subscribe if you like the video, and let's keep exploring the enduring heart of Benin together. As the myths of the Abas echoed through the villages, their stories carried on the wind like the scent of palm wine. Yue stood in the palace, his gaze fixed on the bronze plaques that told of his reign. The kingdom was mighty, its coral and bronze a beacon of power. But the past was calling, urging reflection on the lessons of Uica and the soul of Benin. So, rest now, let the myths of the Abas linger in your dreams, and we'll return soon, to reflect on the twilight of Benin's ancient era, where the past and present met under a starlit sky. As the enduring myths of the Abas weave their final threads through the starlit night, their stories lingering like the soft strum of a griot's harp over Benin's vibrant heart. Let's pause at the twilight of this ancient kingdom's tale. Oba Yue's reign, built on the sacred foundations laid by Uica and tested by the tides of foreign trade, had forged a realm of coral, bronze, and whispered resistance, its soul captured in the songs and plaques that echoed through time. Now, as the kingdom stood at the crossroads of its past and an uncertain future, its people, farmers, traders, warriors, and queens gathered under the same stars that had watched their ancestors, reflecting on a legacy that bound them to the land and the gods. Tonight, dear friends, let's sit by the fading fires of Benin, where the past and present meet in a quiet dance, and allow the gentle rhythm of this tale to carry you through the reflections that shaped a kingdom's soul and its echoes in our world today. Settle in, let the world grow soft, and let the story of Benin wrap around you like a warm breeze. If you're finding solace in this journey through Benin's ancient past, please consider subscribing to the channel to join us for more stories that weave the threads of history into the present. In the waning years of the 15th century, Benin stood as a beacon of power in West Africa, its earthworks rising like the roots of an ancient Iroko tree, its markets alive with the shimmer of coral and the hum of trade. The legacy of Uica, the First Oba had grown from a spark into a flame under Ua's hand, transforming Igodomigodo into a kingdom whose name was spoken with awe from the Niger Delta to the distant courts of the north. The bronze plaques that adorned the palace, crafted by the skilled hands of the Ijan Irunwin, told of kings who walked with the gods, of warriors who carved paths through the forest, and of women whose wisdom held the kingdom together. Yet, as the stars gleamed over the fortified walls, the people of Benin, farmers like Ovbiosa, traders like Amensk, and weavers like Igosa, stood at a moment of reflection, their hearts turning to the past as they faced an uncertain future. The myths of the Orbas were the heartbeat of this reflection. In the village of Ik, where the Ikpoba River flowed gently under the moonlight, Ovbiosa gathered his family around a fire, its embers casting a soft glow on their faces. He spoke of Uwaka's coronation, when lightning lit the sky, and of Uwaka's magic, which summoned rain to save parched fields. His children, their eyes wide, listened as he recounted the tale of the great Iroko tree in the grove of Osanoba, where the gods had blessed the first Oba. Ovibius's voice, weathered by years of toil, carried a quiet pride, a belief that Benin's strength lay in its stories, which bound the people to their land like roots to the earth. His wife Igosa added her own tale, her hands busy with a loom as she spoke of Idia, the Ioba, whose wisdom had calmed a divided court. The firelight danced on her cloth, its patterns of lightning and coral a silent homage to the kingdom's past. In the market of Usulu, the griot Omeric strummed his harp, his voice rising over the chatter of traders as he sang of Ua's moats, which shielded the kingdom but cost the people their fields. The crowd, their baskets heavy with yams and fish, paused to listen, their laughter mingling with the weight of memory. A trader named Adesua, her stall piled with smoked catfish, joined in, a voice bold as she recounted a lesser-known story of a forgotten Oba who had shared his coral beads with a starving village, earning the gods' favor. The tale, though old, felt alive in the market, its message of generosity a quiet rebuke to the taxes that still pressed on the people. Amends, now a respected elder at Uaton, added her own verse, singing of the Portuguese ships that brought glass but took lives, her words a reminder that Benin's strength was its own, not borrowed from outsiders. The market, alive with voices, but became a living archive, its stories a bridge between the past and the dreams of tomorrow. The palace, too, was a place of reflection. Ue, now an old king, his coral beads heavy with the weight of years, stood before the bronze plaques that told his story. The Ijan Irunwin had crafted new works, their surfaces gleaming with scenes of his reign meeting the Portuguese, offering coral to Alakon, standing tall amid a storm. Osaro, the master sculptor, worked with his apprentice Igorevba, their hands steady as they carved Uwaka's lightning into bronze, ensuring the first Aba's legacy endured. Ura traced the plaque's edges, his fingers brushing the cool metal, and felt the weight of his choices. He had built a kingdom of power, but the whispers of resistance from farmers like Ovibiosa, from traders like Adesuri, reminded him that true strength lay in unity. Idia, his mother, joined him, her coral beads clicking softly, her voice a steady anchor. A king's legacy is not in walls, she said, but in the hearts of his people. Ue nodded, his gaze distant, knowing that his reign would be judged by the stories that outlived him. The Owen priests, led by Osahan, wove these reflections into their rituals. In the grove of Osanabua, where the great Iroko tree stood sentinel, they performed a ceremony to honor the ancestors, their chants rising as they offered kola nuts and palm wine. Ozaza, now a leader among the women, stood beside them, her coral beads a gift from Idia, her voice steady as she sang of Uwaka's unification. The people gathered, their hands raised to the sky, their prayers a plea for the gods to guide Benin through the changes brought by outsiders. Osahan cast coral beads and cowrie shells, their patterns speaking of a kingdom tested but enduring, its soul rooted in the sacred forests and the stories of its kings. The ritual, lit by the glow of torches, was a moment of connection, a reminder that Benin's past was its strength, even as the world shifted around it. The common people carried these myths into their daily lives. Ineki Ahmed, once a warrior, now taught the youth to carve wooden figures, their forms echoing the bronze plaques of the palace. His sister Ozaza brought stories from the court, her words soft as she spoke of Idia's wisdom and Ue's struggles. The children, their hands busy with knives and wood, listened, their laughter a spark of hope that Benin's legacy would endure. A healer named Osaratin, whose hut was a sanctuary for the poor, told of a time when Uwaka walked among the villagers, his sandals dusty, his heart open to the people's needs. Her remedies, steeped in the herbs of the sacred forests, were given freely, her stories a gift that healed both body and spirit. The people, from farmers to traders, wove these tales into their work, their voices rising in songs that praised the Obas but also called for justice, a quiet echo of the resistance that had shaped Ue's reign. The arrival of the Portuguese with their glass and firearms had left its mark on Benin's myths. In Usulu, traders began to tell of a new hero, a warrior who refused a foreign weapon, trusting instead in Ogun's iron. The story, though perhaps born of hope rather than truth, gave the people pride, a belief that their gods were stronger Then the strangers crosses men's at Uaton spoke of a Portuguese captain who learned to bow to Ua, his ship dwarfed by the Oba's coral-clad presence. Her tales sung to the rhythm of the river became a myth of Benin supremacy, a reminder that the kingdom's soul was its own. Yet the shadow of the slave trade lingered, a wound that the myths could not fully heal. Ovbiosa, his son now safe, prayed nightly at a shrine, his single coral bead clutched tightly, asking the gods to protect Benin from the stranger's hunger. Ioba, particularly Idia, were the keepers of these reflections. In her chamber, scented with crushed ginger and lit by oil lamps, Idia gathered the women of the court, their voices soft as they shared stories of past queen's mother who had guided kings through crises. Ozeza, her apprentice, listened, her heart stirred by the legacy she would inherit. Idia spoke of Etiuaka's mother, whose quiet strength had unified the clans, and urged the women to carry this wisdom forward. Ue, seeking Idia's counsel, sat with her under the stars, his coral beads heavy with the weight of his reign. "The past is our guide," Idia said, her voice warm but firm, "but the future is ours to shape." Ue nodded, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his legacy would be judged by the stories his people told. The bronze plaques, now lining the palace walls, were a testament to this legacy. Osaro's final work, crafted in the twilight of Ue's reign, showed the Oba standing among his people, his hands open, his coral beads gleaming. The plaque, unveiled during a ritual, was blessed by the Owen, its surface anointed with palm oil as the people chanted. Igarevba, Osaro's apprentice, stood beside it, his eyes bright with pride, knowing that his hands would carry Ben's stories into the future. The myths, the plaques, the songs, they were the kingdom's soul, a legacy that would endure long after the coral faded and the earthworks crumbled. As we reflect on Benin's past, we see its echoes in our own time. The stories of Uaka's lightning, Ua's magic, and Ua's wisdom remind us that power is fleeting, but the bonds of community, faith, and resilience endure. The people of Benin, from the farmers to the sculptors, wove a tapestry that it still speaks to us. Its threads of fear and magic a mirror to our own struggles and dreams. So, dear friends, as the fires of Benin burn low, let's carry their light with us. A reminder that the past is never truly gone. It lives in the stories we tell, the choices we make, and the unity we forge. If you've enjoyed this journey through Benin's heart, please subscribe if you liked the video, and let's keep exploring the past together as the stars shine over the ancient kingdom. Their light a faint echo of the coral that adorned its kings. We leave Benin at dusk, its myths and memories lingering in the air. The legacy of the Orbas, from Uaka's spark to Ua's flame, lives on, a story of fear, magic, and the enduring strength of a people united. So, rest now. Let the echoes of Benin linger in your dreams, and may you find peace in the stories that connect us to the past.